Chapter 22-25. Zero had been looking at her gently from start to end. Wherever she went, he would follow her in silence. It was as if she was really his god and he was willing to follow her. After Bai Weiwei walked through the door, she suddenly kicked away the soft cushions in irritation. Zero obediently picked up the cushions and placed them by her feet. Weiwei Bai was even more annoyed by this. She kicked Zero's body fiercely. His body was too hard and it hurt her foot. He didn't move at all. Instead, Zero gently held her ankle. His voice was low and there was a dangerous glint in his eyes. Does it hurt? Weiwei Bai trembled and immediately took a few steps back. Her face was pale as she said fiercely, "Damn pervert, stay away from me." Zero's cold eyes blinked innocently. Then, he automatically moved his body away from her. Weiwei Bai looked at him and felt as if all her strength had been injected into cotton. It was very uncomfortable. She finally exploded. She rushed over and grabbed Zero's clothes. All the anger that she had suppressed for so many days exploded. "How long are you going to lock me up? If being your god means being locked up by you, I don't want it." Zero's eyes darkened, but he revealed a gentle smile. "It's chaotic outside. Weiwei, I have to protect you." Weiwei Bai said word by word, "You're the one who's hurting me, controlling me, and imprisoning me. I don't need the protection of a pervert like you." Zero's eyes darkened. Darkness began to grow in his eyes. His smile slowly turned evil and crazy. "But, I need it." His fingertips gently tapped the air. Those threads suddenly moved. Weiwei Bai couldn't control her actions. Her expression was full of disgust, but she gently reached out and hugged Zero. Zero took advantage of the situation and carried her. She obediently leaned against his chest and wrapped her arms around his neck. Zero smiled brightly as he placed her on the bed. "It's time. It's time to sleep." Weiwei Bai couldn't control her body and could only lie there obediently. "You're crazy." She could only say whatever she wanted. Zero held her face. His eyes were lazy, affectionate, greedy, and devoted. His lips touched her skin and he said softly, "Don't hate me, Weiwei. You can spoil me, whip me, and punish me, but don't push me away." Weiwei Bai's eyes were extremely sharp. She sneered, "Can I push you away? You keep saying that I am your god, but is there a god that is as useless as me? Even if I don't sleep, I have to be controlled." Zero looked up. Under her long and thin eyelashes, her eyes were as beautiful as a river of light. It was affectionate, but there was no warmth in it at all. He leaned against the bed in an absolutely submissive and humble manner and held her fingers with both hands. It was like a gesture of pious prayer. "I just can't lose you. This is my way of protecting you." If there really was a god in this world, how could a greedy mortal let go of his god when he had a way to imprison it? He had only done something that anyone would have done. So he never felt guilty or blamed himself. All his softness and obedience were just means to curry favor. Weiwei Bai felt that she was crazy to seriously debate with him. She closed her eyes and pursed her lips angrily. She didn't intend to speak. But in less than a few minutes, she suddenly heard Zero murmuring softly. Weiwei Bai opened her eyes and looked at him strangely. "What are you doing?" /button. Chapter 22-26. He was actually kneeling by the bed, holding her hand and placing it on his chest. He lowered his head and prayed like a sacrificial lamb. This scene was indescribably beautiful, but it was also strange and scary. Zero's closed eyes trembled and then slowly opened. He said seriously, "I'm praying to you. Isn't it normal for a believer to pray to their God for their wishes to be fulfilled?" Weiwei Bai, she was someone who had seen a lot. This was the first time she had seen such a scene. Don't be fooled by this lunatic. She thought that it was strange enough that the 4 personalities could change. The weirdest thing was that after the personality fusion, it actually created a lunatic whose brain rhythm was even weirder than hers. She didn't even know where to start. Wei Wei Bai was helpless. What wish do you want to fulfill? After saying that, get lost. You can't even sleep well. She would feel normal if he dissected her and ate her one day. Zero stared at her, real greed and desire appearing in his golden eyes. My wish is to obtain everything of yours. Wei Wei Bai retracted her hand. Think about it slowly. In this world, no one can obtain everything of another person. Do you think you can integrate me into your bones? The passion in Zero's eyes dimmed a little. It was as if he knew that she was right. Wei Wei Bai impatiently reached out and pinched his chin, looking at him coldly. There is only one way to make us fuse together, and that is to burn us to ashes together. At that time, whoever can tell whose ashes are whose will definitely be mixed together. Wei Wei Bai sneered, unfortunately, I can never be with you. Zero looked at her silently, then he revealed a gentle smile. Wei Wei Bai ignored him, but he gently covered her with the blanket. It was getting closer and closer to a month, and Wei Wei Bai was getting more and more anxious. Zero was still obedient and didn't fight back. Even the system couldn't stand it. Fuck, the male lead is suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. I think you're the prisoner. Wei Wei Bai said, am I not pretending to be crazy so that I can find a chance to stab myself in the stomach? Those air threads were everywhere, it was not easy to find a chance. The remaining energy of the dagger couldn't deal with Zero, but it was easy to deal with an empty balloon and an embryo that hadn't germinated. She just couldn't find a chance. The system said, why do I feel like you just want to beat the male lead to vent your anger? By Wei Wei, yes, aw. The system, scumbag and scumbag, a match made in heaven. The system expressed that it would let them do whatever they wanted. It held the manual and passed it by. After half a month, one day, Zero suddenly put her in a complicated and gorgeous dress. He draped a bright red cloak over her shoulders. It was as if he was looking at the most beautiful angel. His eyes were filled with pure joy and happiness. Wei Wei, I'll take you out. Wei Wei Bai didn't refuse, she couldn't. When he brought her to an unfamiliar place, she saw an incomparably huge ancient castle appear. The tall and magnificent door slowly opened, and everyone knelt down. Zero held her hand and walked to the balcony. There was a golden chair there. He asked her to sit down, then raised his beautiful finger and pointed down. Look. Wei Wei Bai was mentally prepared, but she was still stunned when she saw it. Under the balcony, there were tens of thousands of people kneeling, whether they were sincere or not. At this moment, she was sitting there like the ruler of the world. Zero slowly knelt down beside her, his eyes were filled with fanatical joy, just like those worshippers below. Look, Wei Wei, I've brought the world to you. Wei Wei Bai's expression was sluggish for a few seconds, then she slowly lowered her eyes to look at him. She seemed to have thought of something, then reached out her finger and gently touched his face. This rare closeness stunned Zero for half a second. Wei Wei Bai revealed a calm and hypocritical smile. Well done, Zero. Maybe he was too shocked by her. Even Zero was happy with such a little bit of encouragement. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 97. Wei Wei Bai, did he really get Stockholm Syndrome from being tortured? The gentle smile on Zero's delicate face dispelled the gloomy evil aura around it. Compared to the worship of everyone in this apocalypse. Her eyes were filled with affirmation, even if it was the most superficial perfunctory. It was more important than the weight of this world. Wei Wei Bai stroked his hair. It was rare for her to be so close to him. She even revealed an incomparably gentle smile. just like at that time, when she was facing the weakest personality. It was beautiful and sincere. A nostalgic expression appeared on Zero's face. But Wei Wei Bai's voice was light and soft, as if she was bewitching him. Zero, do you love me? Zero calmly said, I love you. Because he was so sure, there was no need for any passionate confession, there was also a sense of shock. Wei Wei Bai gently stroked his hair with her fingertips, as if she was treating a favorite pet. Her voice became sweet. Then give me all your abilities, okay? /T. Chapter 22-27. Zero seemed to be greedy for her initiative to touch him, the warmth of her fingertips. It was as if it was his salvation. He did not even care about the greed in her eyes and how unreasonable such a request was. He slowly raised his eyes. His cold golden eyes revealed a trace of a satisfied smile. You want my ability? Wei Wei Bai frowned and sneered, I want it even in my dreams. But I know you won't give it to me, so get lost. She had been so irritable recently, pure and unpretentious. Emotional fluctuations, changeable June weather. Just as she was about to retract her finger, the moment her fingertips left his cheek, he suddenly grabbed her hand. He was still half squatting, his black robe fell to the ground and flowed on the ground. The golden sunlight fell on his face. She could clearly see that under his cold expression, there was a hint of reluctance. Wei Wei Bai did not care whether he was willing or not, she tried to retract her finger. But now, her ability was too far away from Zero's. If he did not want to let go, she could not retract her finger. Zero was still in the same position, his lips curved slightly. If possible, I would like to fulfill any of your requests. But this was not possible. Because she got what she wanted, she did not want him anymore. What she wanted was his ability. If the ability was always with him, then even if she was jealous and resentful, she could only stay by his side. Zero narrowed his eyes at her, his gaze deep and greedy. I have to stop any possibility of you leaving me. Wei Wei Bai was speechless. Then, she tried to retract her finger, but Zero was indifferent, he held on to her finger and did not let go. Her fingertips were still on his face. It was as if he could feel that her gentleness just now had never left. Wei Wei Bai hardened her heart and scratched his skin with her fingernails. Then, she realized that only a small mark was left. The smile in Zero's eyes deepened, because it seemed that she had taken the initiative to touch him again. Wei Wei Bai said to the system, this guy is so perverted, I can't afford to offend him. The system said, don't worry, you can be even more perverted than him. I have faith in you, good luck. Wei Wei Bai was speechless. After watching the scene of thousands of people worshipping him, Bai Wei Wei faintly glanced at Zero, neither happy nor sad. Zero calmly held her hand, he walked back to the darkness step by step from the light with his back facing everyone. The castle was so huge that it was impossible to imagine how it was built in such a short time. Zero did not lock her back in that damned place full of prison vines. Instead, he held her hand and walked slowly. The red carpet was as gorgeous as red wine. His golden eyes, in the dark, was suppressing a sense of happiness. It was as if it was a very happy thing to hold her hand and accompany her everywhere. In contrast, Bai Weiwei's expression was no different from that of a dead parent. Walking in front of a huge round window, she saw a vast expanse of yellow sand outside. Many huge bases were being built in the yellow sand. Zero's voice was gentle, when the bases are completed, I will begin to revive the vitality of this land, and set up a strict hierarchy. I will help you build the kingdom you like, and everyone in this world will be your slaves. All of your slaves. Because she wanted to be a god, he pressed the heads of all the people in the world and made them kneel before her. This gift was terrifying. If there was an uprising one day, those slaves would rush in and cut her into pieces. Download the at https://m/sashu.com button at the bottom to record this chapter. Chapter 22-28. That was to be expected. He was the overlord of the base at the end of the world, but he was beaten so miserably by Zero. The relationship between humans that could be considered equal became the relationship between a slave master and a slave. Who would be willing to do that? Wei Bai suddenly realized the purpose of the main system to make Zero lose all his abilities. Maybe it was because Zero used his abilities to cause too much damage in this world. The main system probably wanted him to fall in love. In the end, he destroyed the balance of the entire world. Wei Bai looked out of the window for a long time. Zero thought that she was yearning for freedom. His eyes darkened. Then, he quietly pulled her hand and was about to walk somewhere else. It's still so dirty outside. It'll look better with flowers and plants after it's done. Wei Bai didn't move. Her eyes shone with an unimaginable light. She stepped back and sat on the windowsill. Behind the huge window was a gray sky and yellow sand. She leaned against the window, one hand still in his palm. Zero stood in the dark and looked at her quietly. Wei Bai suddenly revealed a seductive smile. Her eyes narrowed, and there was a seductive look in her eyes. Kneel. Zero didn't hesitate. He elegantly knelt down on one knee. His fingers even smoothed out the creases of his black robe. His voice was quiet and gentle. Do you need me to be more humble? It was as if he would fulfill her wish if she said so. The young man's youthful face had a trace of infatuation. But more than that, there was a crazed look in the depths of his eyes. Wei Bai didn't say anything. She tentatively stretched out her other hand and gently touched his face with her fingertips. She had been dispirited for so long. Now that she was more energetic, there was a gorgeous light in her eyes. He couldn't take his eyes off her. How humble can you be? You're already kneeling. She murmured, but her smile became even more beautiful. A gust of wind blew behind her, and her long hair fluttered gently. That gorgeous beauty made Zero pause for half a second. He seemed to remember the first time they hugged. She took the initiative to press him under her body. She was a little impatient, but her beauty was indescribable. He was still a rational person. Even with such strong self-control, there were still ripples in his heart that he couldn't suppress. It was itchy, it was breathtaking, and it was love. Just like now, her eyes were filled with suppressed impatience, but there was a stunning smile on her face. Her actions were frivolous and showed no respect for him. Her every move was so devilish that people were willing to die for her. Ling gently closed her eyes. Her long and thick eyelashes suppressed the infatuation in her eyes. As long as you like it, I can do anything with you. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of madness in it. Wei Bai's fingertips were already at his throat. She narrowed her eyes and smiled. Anything. After saying that, a transparent thread of air appeared under her fingernails. She had been bored out of her wits recently, so she tried to control the threads of the puppets. In the end, it took her a long time. He actually broke a thread. The thread was hidden in his fingernail, and it was as tough as a sharp blade. The thread appeared without a sound. Ling didn't seem to notice it either. There wasn't even a trace of fluctuation in his eyes. His exquisite face was like the most profound and beautiful oil painting, with a strong sense of beauty. His gaze was still quietly fixed on Wei Bai. His beautiful neck didn't even dodge. He quietly waited for the thread in her hand to decide. Wei Bai didn't care whether or not he noticed her little trick. /button Chapter 22-29. She continued to stroke his neck, as though she was an owner who was pampering her cat. Wei Wei Bai's voice was calm. I used to think that being a god was good. It was good to have endless power. Now that I've been locked up by you, I feel that this kind of life is not a big deal. As she spoke, the silk thread in her hand slowly cut into the skin of his neck. The silk thread was unexpectedly sharp. Blood seeped out from the transparent thread. The red liquid was like a blooming red rose. It was gorgeous and strange. Zero did not even frown. He continued to look at her with such an infatuated and loving gaze. It was as though she wanted to use the silk thread in the air to break his neck. It was just a small matter to please him. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes slightly. Her smile became sinister. Even if I kill you, you won't resist, right? Zero's beautiful thin lips moved. In the end, it was like a sigh. If that's what you want. Wei Wei Bai, she really couldn't beat him in pretending to be a pervert. If perverts were ranked, Zero would definitely be the king of perverts. Her smile froze a little. Then, she exerted more force in her fingers. More blood flowed out. Blood stained her fingers. He started to tremble. His eyelashes trembled as well. His eyes became a little watery. There was a hint of fragile beauty. She could feel his breathing. It became shallower and shallower until it was almost gone. Wei Wei Bai's actions were ruthless. Her tone was cold and emotionless. Do you like it? This is my gift to you. It's a monster that I created. Since he was so generous to let her hurt him, she was not going to be polite with him. He dared to imprison her. She dared to rack her brains to kill him. Wei Wei Bai's eyes revealed endless coldness and cruelty. It was shocking. Zero was still holding one of her hands. His neck was slightly raised. Blood flowed down his exquisite collarbone and chest. It was like a sacrificial gesture. It was pure and innocent. It was absolutely stunning. The silk thread in the air at Wei Wei Bai's fingertips was red. It was the shadow of blood. She exerted force. Her hatred was so obvious. Suddenly, the thread snapped. Wei Wei Bai frowned. She snorted and sneered, what a bummer. After saying that, she wiped her bloody fingers on his clothes. Zero's powerful self-healing ability played a role. The wound on his neck healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Only his body was still covered in blood. She looked on coldly, then turned her eyes away to avoid trouble. But in the next second, Zero stood up and placed his hands on both sides of the window. His slender body enveloped her. His domineering manner made Wei Wei Bai feel uncomfortable as she looked up at him. However, she saw the smile in his eyes. His thin lips parted slightly, and his voice was slightly hoarse. Wei Wei, do I get a reward for being so obedient? He could give up everything for her. However, he was a greedy monster. Since he had already paid the price, even if he had to snatch it by force, he had to get back some benefits. To appease the greedy and crazy beast in his heart. Wei Wei Bai was completely convinced by Zero's freakishness. She said to the system, this is the first time I feel that my freakishness has actually lost. System, you said you're a pervert, and you're so proud of yourself, /crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www.sashu.com. Download Transmigration system, Adonis, come here and read this on your phone, https://m.sashu.com. Chapter 22-30. You can search Transmigration system, Adonis, you can come to Sashu.com in Baidu to find the. Against such a capable, perverted, sick, blackened, and crazy target like Zero. Wei Wei Bai wondered if her future was to be a haggard old woman who had children and had a family here. She was invulnerable to both soft and hard methods. She would just deny it after eating. Wei Wei Bai told the system about her worries while stuffing food into her mouth. The system looked at her eating happily and complained with such a worried tone. It was speechless for a long time before saying, "Even if you have children, you can only stay here for 2 years." A year had passed, and the favorability of the main mission was at 97. In the past, she could just leave after a while. But now, she was being held back by a weird side mission. He thought that the host was anxious. Looking at the host who was eating with her mouth full, it decided to just be a haggard old woman. Wei Wei Bai sighed worriedly. "That's right, 2 years, and the child is only 1 year old. How pitiful." Then, she ate another piece of cake. The system was speechless. Ever since it was hit by the pervert of the male lead, it felt that it could not find a more perverted host. It seemed to have given up on itself. The system looked at a new discount item in the supermarket and hesitated whether to say it or not. It felt like the host was enjoying being a haggard old woman. Wei Wei Bai ate her cake. "What's the matter? Why are you hesitating?" "System, the host can't see him. How do you know he's hesitating?" "Wei Wei Bai, when you pout, I know whether you're going to poop or pick up soap." "System, go be a haggard old woman, a scumbag mother." In the end, the system said, "There's a discount item called the Random Difficulty Solver." "Wei Wei Bai, why does this name sound so weird?" "System, it's like a random lottery. It's a lucky gift bag. After you buy it, it can solve a problem, but you'll never know what kind of problem it's going to solve. For example, some hosts directly solve the most important strategy problem after using it. But some hosts, after using it, actually solved their recent constipation problem. It was almost like a lottery. There was a huge difference between the first prize and the thank you for your participation award. "Wei Wei Bai, how much HP?" The system said, 15 life points. This thing was randomly placed on the shelves. It might not even appear once in 100 years. Therefore, even though the price was extremely low, not many hosts were able to buy it. Wei Wei Bai had bought it for 580 yuan. He no longer cared about 15 days, but he still cared. But now, she was forced to the point where she had nowhere to go. After swallowing the last bite of the cake, she said with heartache, "Buy it. This is the last time. If you can't solve the problem, I'll be a scumbag mother." Damn it, he had to torment himself to this extent. If she still couldn't leave, what else could she do if she had a child? The system nodded and purchased the difficulty solver. This thing was hard to come by. Even if the host didn't buy it, he would keep it and take it out when he needed it in the future. After he bought it, the system immediately gave him a prize. Then, he would wait for the solution to come into play. In the end, after waiting for a long time, Wei Wei Bai said, "Have you used it?" The system was silent for a while before saying, "Yes, I did." "Do you feel anything?" Wei Wei Bai was speechless for a moment before she suddenly touched her face. "It seems like I have a very small pimple on my face. It's gone." When she said this, the two of them fell into a deeper silence. The so-called solution to the problem was to solve the pimple that had been causing her to get angry recently. Chapter 2231. When one's luck was bad, even picking up a piece of soap could cause a comminuted fracture. Maybe it was because Wei Wei Bai's dazed expression was too obvious. Zero, who was sitting opposite her, looked up faintly, then put his elbows on the table and leaned forward. His fingers touched her face, as if her actions just now made him curious. "What's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" He did not dare to tell her that she was pregnant. He was worried that she would rebound badly. Now that she hated him, she might not like his child. He could only secretly check her body, pay attention to everything about her, and let her scold him as she wished. As long as she liked it. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. "I'm fine." Just as she was about to continue eating, Zero's eyes flashed with a trace of disbelief. His fingers were stained with a trace of powder. Then, he looked at Wei Wei Bai. Her white skin started to become illusory. Bit by bit, life force dispersed in her body. This scattered life force, along with her body, seemed to be collapsing and disappearing. Wei Wei Bai also noticed the condition of her body. She frowned and asked the system, "What happened?" The system, "You," exploded. Wei Wei Bai, the system, "Looks like the difficulty solver solved you." Solve a difficulty, then the difficulty solver gave out a reward. It actually killed Wei Wei Bai. So in the eyes of the difficulty solver, Wei Wei Bai's existence was a difficulty. Wei Wei Bai. Fuck, if I'm solved, how are we going to solve Zero's side mission? Our souls will be wiped out. She was prepared to be a scumbag mother just to use the remaining time to solve the side mission. After all, there were only a few days left. There was no way to solve Zero's ability problem. Wei Wei Bai was just about to ask the system to look for a lifesaver to save her life. If it were not for the side mission's terrifying punishment. She did not want to pay such a high price. But before she could open her mouth, a huge and warm life force surged into her collapsing body. Her eyelashes fluttered as Zero appeared beside her and hugged her tightly. His body was trembling violently, and his voice was panting heavily. "Do you not like to be here with me that much?" That panicked tone was filled with despair and grief that surged from the depths of his throat. "I've been watching you so closely, yet you still managed to find a way to commit suicide." Wei Wei Bai, this was a misunderstanding, but she didn't want to explain. Wei Wei Bai seemed to have thought of something and lowered her eyes calmly. When she looked up again, the corners of her eyes were red. A deep sadness appeared in her eyes. However, there was also a cruel pleasure in his sorrowful eyes. She said softly, "You want to control everything about me, but you're not a real god. Look, my death is up to me." Zero's body stiffened as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. From the moment he was born, he had used his own power to control everything in this world. Even if it was her, she had always been in his grasp. But when he saw her, his life force began to dissipate, and he realized that his so-called power to control everything was so weak. He actually had no idea how she had managed to do all this right under his nose. He had clearly locked all of her power. Wei Wei Bai saw that his usually calm and beautiful face had a fragile fear, and she finally revealed a brilliant smile. "Look, you're not omnipotent. At least, if I were to die, you wouldn't be able to save me." His life force kept flowing into her body. However, her own life force and the speed at which her body was collapsing was always a little faster. If this continued, no matter how much life force he had, no matter how much power he had, it would all be absorbed and destroyed by her. The progress bar of the side mission that hadn't moved for a long time. It began to slowly rise again. Zero hugged her tightly. Her golden hair fell on her body, and the dust that looked like stars fell on her. It was her body and life that was disappearing. Hearing her cruel and calm words, he finally slowly raised his head. His beautiful thin lips had lost all color. Even his golden pupils had turned gray and white. It was terrifying and demonic. "You think you can get rid of me like this?" Zero's voice was so gentle that it made people's hair stand on end. His hand slowly moved to her chest. The spatial crack appeared again, and a huge black power poured into his body. It turned into boundless life force that poured into her body again. Wei Wei Bai coldly said, "It's no use, you can't save me." Zero smiled, and there was a shocking madness in his paranoid eyes. That's right, but even if you want to go to hell, you have to take me with you. Don't ever think of abandoning me. Ding, the male lead's favorability has increased to 100. Chapter 2232. The dark space crack seemed to be completely torn apart by some kind of power. In the empty space, there was a terrifying power rolling everywhere. And these powers were all absorbed by Zero. Chairs, tables, furniture, lamps, everything began to shatter in the face of absolute power. He sat on the ground with Wei Wei Bai in his arms, and his golden hair began to become illusory. Because of the rapid erosion of power, his skin also became fragile. His blood vessels burst, and blood gushed out from under his skin. It was extremely frightening. However, the expression on his devilishly exquisite face, which was bleeding horribly, was still so gentle and affectionate. Wei Wei Bai's fingers gripped his clothes tightly. You can't save me. Stop it. He was absorbing all the power in this plane of space. The vitality of the earth, the dark power of space, and the energy of people. Together, they were all walking towards the true end of the world. Even Wei Wei Bai was shocked by this scene. It was a typical example of a person dying, and the whole world would be buried with him. Zero's fingers kept pinching the back of her neck. This was a possessive and paranoid action. His eyes had a hint of beautiful blurriness. In the mist of power that filled the sky, his smile was like the most beautiful demon. Bewitching all living things, and destroying everything like the evil god. So what? Whether I can be saved or not, I will be with you. Live together. When he died, even if he turned into ashes, he would drag her along with his ashes. Oh, this kind of way to die from being crushed by a terrifying power. In the end, they might not even have ashes left, but even if they turned into empty energy in the end, they could still be entwined together. How could she keep leaving him? How could, a terrifying and extremely vague obsession suddenly appeared in his heart. His obsession with her seemed to have started a long time ago. The fear that rose from his bones seemed to be forever her back view when she left. The fear of being abandoned made him rather die with her than live on his own. It was too painful to be alone. A world without her was too hopeless. Don't leave me. The power that rushed into his body was then diluted by him, dissolving into gentle life force. Enter her body. He destroyed himself bit by bit to keep her by his side. Fear finally appeared in Wei Wei Bai's eyes. She had never had so many emotions in her heart. His heart seemed to throb a little. This throbbing was so faint, yet so real. As if she was bewitched, she couldn't help but gently touch his eyes with her fingers. His eyelashes had a dense light, the result of his life force dissipating. Zero seemed to be shocked. His eyelashes trembled, and a stream of blood flowed out from his eyes. Because he was surprised and flattered, the muscles in his eyes twitched. As a result, the already weak spot tore open, causing blood to flow out. Her life force had always been a little faster than his. Wei Wei Bai's vision began to turn black, and the world became dizzy again. She seemed to be muttering something softly, "Don't like me, it's not worth it." This sentence was more like an instinct. After she finished speaking, her mind went blank, leaving no trace behind. The side mission also announced the completion of the mission. In the shattered world, only Zero's illusory body was left. He hugged Wei Wei Bai and gradually turned into dust. // Chapter 2233. He sat there quietly as the plane began to collapse. The sand of the end of the world, the barren land, and the humans who had not been sucked dry. The gray sky, the half-built base. There was nowhere to escape, only a few monsters were left. They seemed to be wiped out by some huge power. This was not the power of humans, nor was it the power of any living creature in this world. It was not even the power of the main system. It was the power of God. The system saw all this happen and could not believe it. The plane was collapsing. Under Zero's pressure, an illusory projection was revealed, and the projection was destroyed in Zero's hands. It looked at Zero with trembling eyes. It found that his transparent body was still imprisoning the pure white soul. It was Wei Wei Bai's soul. The system's fingers trembled, and it wanted to reach out and snatch it. But Zero just looked up quietly. His eyes were like flowing lights, emotionless. It was not Zero's eyes. It was Yi Yuxuan. When Wei Wei Bai's body disappeared and the soul was about to return to the system, Zero woke up. Zero unexpectedly woke up and reached out to imprison by Wei Wei's soul in his arms. His golden hair fell to the ground, and his calm eyes were like an abyss of light. Suddenly, his eyelashes trembled, and a trace of humanity appeared. He was a little confused, but when he saw the soul in his arms, he suddenly smiled. This is the world she came from. The system finally confirmed. It looked at Zero with a strange expression. Yi Yuxuan. Oh, what was going on? Why was Yi Yuxuan here? Shouldn't he be in the real world? Waiting for a dream. How could the main system tolerate such a big bug appearing in the mission at the same time? Yi Yuxuan carefully held her soul, and his eyes became gentle. This is my Wei Wei. He remembered all of Zero's memories. In fact, he was Zero. But he had forgotten. But he still remembered her instinctively, so he was moved and happy when she approached him. Love her willingly. This was the accumulation of love from many worlds. For the first time, Yi Yuxuan realized that it wasn't the isolated feeling in her dreams, but real love. That weakest personality was after he came to this world with her. It was the purest and most instinctive emotion. It was absolute dependence and love. The system finally shouted, "How did you get here?" Yi Yuxuan had transmigrated. Without the guidance of the system, he tore through time and space to chase after her. How did he locate Wei Wei Bai's position? Red line. But just by relying on the red string, his soul had come running. How strong would one have to be to achieve this? Even if his body was very strong, his body in the real world had not awakened its true power. The system was completely in awe of Yi Yuxuan. Yi Yuxuan glanced at the system and gently hugged Wei Wei Bai. He said, "Are we going back?" The system hurriedly nodded. "Give me her soul." It was really afraid that Yi Yuxuan would suddenly take things too hard and do something crazy to Wei Wei Bai's soul. Yi Yuxuan looked at the world that had disappeared. This world is fake. The system said, "It's not fake. If you didn't appear, everything would be real." The soul of the original body had appeared, and the power was incompatible with the world. It directly crushed the world. To facilitate the next reading, you can click at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 2234. He finally knew why the main system issued the mission to destroy Zero's power. Because Zero's power did not come from this plane at all. It came from Yi Yuxuan's soul. This kind of power, no matter which plane it appeared in, it would destroy the plane. Destroying this main body's power was equivalent to saving the world. Yi Yuxuan seemed to feel that the system's words were contradictory. If he did not appear, it would be real, but if he did appear, it would be fake. His body was finally broken because of the power swallowing, and a golden soul appeared. It was not like Wei Wei Bai's weak light ball. He still had the image of a human. His body was tall and elegant, his golden hair fell to the ground, his beautiful naked body was full of the light of power. This was the image of a soul maintained by a huge power. The system reached out with trembling hands. Can you return her soul to me? Yi Yuxuan hugged the white light ball. He lowered his head and peered into the light ball. He found the little Wei Bai curled up like a baby in the womb, sleeping peacefully. His eyes were full of gentle smiles. This was his Wei. This was the first time he saw her in her soul state. She was so cute that he could not stand it. The system looked at the infatuated Yi Yuxuan like a pitiful beggar, and continued, when we go back, give me her soul. Yi Yuxuan completely treated the system as air. He looked up, the gentleness in his eyes turned into a murderous coldness. You're the one hugging her every time. System, its neck was cold, it had a premonition that it was going to turn around. What was going on? Yi Yuxuan stared at it calmly for a while, then retracted his gaze, and calmly walked towards the system. He reached out and grabbed the collar of the system that was only a few years old was swayed forward. You lead the way, we'll go back. System, he was once a famous great commander, but now, he was being carried around like a dog being walked. Did it have no shame, no dignity? Yi Yuxuan's voice was indifferent and cold. Do you know the way? It was as if he was telling a dog that it would be stewed if it didn't recognize the way. The system silently shed 2 lines of sorrowful tears. Yes, of course. Take care, I'll lead the way for you. Then, he packed up his handiwork and the discounted snacks and resigned himself to leading the way. This time, it was surprisingly smooth leading the way. He had Yi Yuxuan's real soul by his side. The source of power that had been guarding the door of reality did not appear again. When they arrived at the door of reality, Yi Yuxuan carefully placed Wei Bai's soul into the system's arms. Protect them well. He lowered his voice and spoke earnestly. The system hugged Wei Bai's soul tightly and nodded. You go out first, I'll follow. Although the journey was smooth, he was still worried. Because this was the first time that Wei Bai's soul was not in his arms. He had been worried that Yi Yuxuan would suddenly go crazy and swallow Wei Bai's soul. Not to mention that it was impossible, Yi Yuxuan had been tortured in so many worlds. It was not impossible for him to suddenly go crazy. Yi Yuxuan looked at the system so eagerly hugging the soul. His gaze darkened as he stared at the system's neck. System, then, he silently hugged Wei Bai's soul forward as if he was holding it. He did not come into too much contact with her soul. Yi Yuxuan's gaze softened a little. System, he's only a few years old now, and he's jealous. Others are vinegar barrels, this is a sea of vinegar. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 2235. Yi Yuxuan then passed through the door of reality and disappeared. The system also jumped into the door of reality. It put Wei Bai's soul into the body. Yi Yuxuan, who was lying next to the body, moved his eyelashes, and opened his eyes before Wei Bai did. In the middle of his black eyes, there was a trace of pale gold. It was the color of the remnants of power. He seemed to be confused for a moment. Then his eyes began to wake up, and he turned his head to see the system floating in the air. He also saw the corner of the huge golden wool above the system's head. Countless feathers of light floated down. They fell on them. Yi Yuxuan was used to this scene. He slowly got up and saw that Wei Bai was still asleep. After the soul returned, she would be tired, so she would sleep for a while before opening her eyes. Yi Yuxuan looked up and said coldly to the system, "Don't tell her, I'll follow behind her." Although he succeeded in following her this time, he still couldn't remember her. Only when he was about to leave, when the soul left the shackles of the body, he suddenly remembered who he was. And he who didn't know Wei Wei Bai, there was always a sense of malice towards Wei Wei Bai instinctively. So he couldn't let Wei Wei Bai know that the person she captured was him. In this way, she could coldly face the man in the plane who had malice towards her in the beginning. So that, she wouldn't be hurt. Yi Yuxuan would rather the him in the plane be destroyed by her. He also didn't want the him in the plane to hurt her. The system immediately nodded. Yi Yuxuan got up and walked out. Then he saw Bai Changyan sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper, talking about the recent business situation. And Qin Qiu was cooking with the nanny. He had only been asleep for 8 hours. It was rare for him to sleep deeply. Even Qin Qiu thought that he was too tired recently and didn't notice anything strange. Yi Yuxuan walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and automatically took out milk. As if by instinct, he wanted to search for those wild fruits in the plain, but when he looked at the food in the fridge, he came to a realization and closed the fridge with a sigh. Qin Qiu was peeling a carrot. He said, "You're awake. You've been too tired recently. It's rare to see you sleep for so long." In the past, Yi Yuxuan's resting time was as strict as a robot's. 4 to 6 hours a day, often 4 hours a day. Even with such a short amount of sleep, his body was still so healthy that it made others jealous. Ever since he started dating Wei Wei Bai, his sleeping time had become even more fragmented. From time to time, he would wake up after 1 or 2 hours, and then occasionally take a nap. Even if he slept like this, his body would still be healthy without any problems. Qin Qiu sometimes felt that he was unrecognizable because of jealousy. What kind of monstrous physique was this? Was he even human? Yi Yuxuan didn't say anything. She just held the milk and leaned against the fridge. His beautiful eyelashes drooped, and his black eyes were incomparably calm. Then he slowly raised the cup to his lips and drank the milk that was going to be given to Wei Wei Bai. He tried not to bring out the habits of the plane. She would be suspicious. Yi Yuxuan drank and slowed down his breathing, getting rid of some of the little habits that would make people suspicious in the plane. Wait until later. Wait until he was free to follow her soul and enter any strange world she wanted to go to. Then he could wake up in those worlds with memories. At that time, he would never hurt her. He would accompany her to do tasks, love her, and spoil her. When he could absolutely master this ability, he could tell her. The person she had always met was him. It was him for all eternity. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com collections below to record the reading record of this time. Chapter 2235 Reality 3. Chapter 2236. When Wei Wei Bai got up, she felt that she did not have a headache or chest ache. She said to the system, "Tongzi, did your abilities increase? I feel so refreshed when I wake up this time, I don't have a headache anymore." The system said, Maybe it's because your soul is stronger." Yi Yuxuan hugged her. How could he not feel refreshed? Her soul was wrapped in such a strong power, if she did not bump into anything, not even the wind of time and space could blow her away. When he thought about it, he felt that he was useless. Wei Wei Bai stretched and got off the bed. "Let's find something to eat. Is there anyone at home?" The system said, "Your father, your doctor, your man." Wei Wei Bai almost kicked the door. "Your man." The system said, "Oh, Yi Yuxuan." He had done everything, except for that one piece of paper. Even the red string was tied. If he was not her man, then what was he? The system felt a little hopeless about this scenario. Because in the end, he had to break up this wild and heartless pair of Mandarin ducks. If he failed, he did not know if Wei Wei Bai would be hurt. He would be destroyed by the two of them the first time. When he thought of this, he quickly took out a small biscuit to calm himself down. Wei Wei Bai said, "It's the weekend today." Having 3 men at home had become a habit. Even if Qin Qiu and Bai Changyan did not live here, they would go to sleep or settle some things. When they were free, they would go to Yi Yuxuan's place. As for Yi Yuxuan, he kept his promise, wherever she was, he would be there. After so long, every time she woke up, he would definitely be by her side. The system said, "Yes, it's a weekend gathering, dinner is just ready." Wei Wei Bai pushed open the door and walked out, but coincidentally bumped into the arms of the man who was walking towards her. It was a faint masculine scent, it was indescribable, but it was unusually clear and light. It was not a perfume, it was more like he brought it with him, a scent that came from within his body. Wei Wei Bai was stunned, she could smell this scent more clearly. She had always known that there was a faint fragrance lingering around Yi Yuxuan. But it was never as clear as this. Wei Wei Bai was stunned for less than half a second, she wanted to move away, but a hand gently pressed on the back of her neck. It was a gentle force. But there was a strong sense of stubbornness. Of course, the man seemed to feel that this action was inappropriate. His fingers trembled and he immediately let go. Wei Wei Bai raised her head and saw Yi Yuxuan's delicate. His cold red lips also pursed, and then a gentle smile appeared on his face. "You're awake." Bai Wei Wei nodded and quietly withdrew from his embrace. Yi Yuxuan was very calm and let her leave. Because of his natural appearance, Wei Wei Bai did not think much about the strange feeling that flashed by just now. Bai Changyan saw that Wei Wei Bai had woken up and nodded calmly, "You're awake. Just in time for dinner." Qin Qiu was setting the table, "Just in time, it's time to eat. After dinner, I'll give you a checkup." Everyone had a normal expression. Waking up after 3 days had become a routine. So in everyone's eyes, what was clearly a very strange thing had become as normal as daily life. Yi Yuxuan also walked over, pulled out a chair, and gestured for Wei Wei Bai to sit. Even Wei Wei Bai felt that this scene was normal. After seeing it so many times, it was normal no matter how abnormal it was. So she sat down with a calm, cute face, and then began to eat. Tea. Chapter 2237. During the meal, Yi Yuxuan still calmly served her food and handed her a napkin. From time to time, he would feed her something. Bai Changyan and Qin Qiu, 2 lonely old dogs, faced the table full of the sour smell of love. They would also calmly serve each other food occasionally, as a friendly help between single dogs. Yi Yuxuan peeled a prawn for Wei Wei Bai, and when he handed it to her, she didn't know if it was intentional or not. His finger gently rubbed against her lips, that rich sauce aroma and the warmth of the man's fingertips, it was like a chemical reaction. It made Wei Wei Bai's scalp tingle a little. Her eyelashes fluttered, but she didn't show any expression on her face. Yi Yuxuan calmly retracted his finger, he didn't seem to be deliberately flirting with her. Wei Wei Bai buried her head in eating, she didn't dare to raise her head. After the meal, it was time for family fun. Wei Wei Bai ran to take a shower. When she closed the door, she chatted with the system before she took off her clothes. "How much is my HP now?" The system, 7,500. The last time she returned to reality, it was 7,500. Now it was still 7,500, thinking of the horrible HP deducted in the last plane. That dagger was 580, and there were all kinds of strange deduction items. Her mouth twitched, she felt that the transmigration strategy was so bad that she lost her underwear. If it wasn't for Yi Yuxuan's HP, she wouldn't have done it even if she died. In the time it took to eat this meal, the points deducted in the last plane were all back. Long live Yi Yuxuan. Wei Wei Bai held back her heartache and said, can the 580 dagger still be used? The system can't be used. In the end, the power of the space crack poured into the male lead's body and destroyed the plane. It also destroyed the dagger. Wei Wei Bai was a little worried. With that little bit of power left, it's worth at least a dozen or 20 HP. If I knew, I wouldn't have wasted it in the end. It's not a loss to stab myself. The system. It felt that it made sense, but also felt that something was wrong. The two extremely stingy host systems had completely distorted their views. He was silent for a while with heartache. After mourning for the 580, Wei Wei Bai sighed again. The system still had some plastic friendship. What's wrong now? Wei Wei Bai sat on the covered toilet and said with a grimace, I'm dying. The system asked, what's wrong with you? After returning, her heart felt much better. Even if she was bungee jumping now, she would probably be fine. Other than her short lifespan, her physical condition was already better than most ordinary people. Wei Wei Bai said, in the past, I was in poor health and had to think twice before doing anything. Now that I'm in good health, I can do anything I want. The system was confused. Isn't that good? Wei Wei Bai sighed. How did you feel when Yi Yuxuan fed me just now? The system said, that braised prawn, it looked delicious. Wei Wei Bai face-bombed. It was delicious, but it wasn't the prawn that was delicious. When Yi Yuxuan fed me and his beautiful fingers touched my lips, I almost jumped up like I was electrocuted. When one's body recovered, one would have more energy. It was the same for both men and women. When one was full of energy, it felt like spring had come. There were prickly animals everywhere. The system said, so you're full, so you want to. Wei Wei Bai held her face with both hands and said in a daze, I've suppressed myself for too long. I'm not dead after facing Yi Yuxuan every day. The system said, you're so thick-skinned, and you're as tough as a cockroach. What are you suppressing? Just go up and block, 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 block. The Transmigration system said, my Prince Charming, come here, /crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www.sashu.com. Download Transmigration system, Adonis, come here and read this on your phone, https://m. Sashu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. The book, please recommend it to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Chapter 2238. But she said softly, I want. Yi Yuxuan's pupils constricted. She said, you. The girl's beautiful eyes were filled with tears. If she said it too generously, it would lose the original sense of attachment. It was more of a straightforward request. Yi Yuxuan suppressed the instinctive evil in his heart and sighed helplessly. Do you know what you're saying? How could he not see the seriousness and indifference in her expression? Serious, indifferent. It was the complete opposite, but she could show it so fearlessly. If he was more ruthless to her, she wouldn't know how dangerous it would be. Wei Wei Bai was at a loss. She hadn't said anything yet. Why did he look like he understood everything? One night was indeed a little awkward and difficult to say. But Wei Wei Bai, who was pleasantly thick-skinned, still straightened her neck. I think we can go further. Yi Yuxuan's fingers trembled, but looking at her expression, she didn't mean that at all. He pursed his lips and his eyes darkened. Which step do you want to go further? It definitely wasn't the step he was thinking of. If it was, she wouldn't have such an expression. Yi Yuxuan sometimes hated his observation skills. Any slight change in her seemed like he was reading her innermost thoughts. Wei Wei Bai's eyes lit up and she reached out her hand to signal him to come closer. Yi Yuxuan hesitated for half a second before gently putting his ear to her lips. The girl's breath was like a sweet wind, making the tip of his ear a little soft. Her words made him feel even more helpless. After saying her request, Wei Weibai felt that if Yi Yuxuan was a man, he would definitely agree. But in the next second, Yi Yuxuan's fingers pressed against the back of her head. His calm voice contained traces of helplessness. "In your eyes, am I that casual?" Bai Weiwei blinked her eyes. "What do you mean by whatever?" Yi Yuxuan was reluctant to say anything harsh, but she could still hear the seriousness in her tone. "I'm a responsible person." Wei Weibai was in a daze, seemingly unable to react. These words were too fucking correct. She was a person whose moral bottom line had fallen into an ocean trench. She felt guilty when she heard that. Yi Yuxuan's eyes were deep and burning, but his tone was as calm as possible. "So, once we have a relationship, I can't not know them after one night. What I want is to confirm that kind of relationship after marriage." Wei Weibai was shocked. Damn, Yi Yuxuan was so conservative. Yi Yuxuan's fingers slowly stroked her hair. When his fingers brushed past the ends of her hair, he almost couldn't help but twirl the ends of her hair around his fingertips and play with them. This was a small problem brought about by the plane. It was a paranoid, crazy, and possessive action. He quickly stopped his fingers and released her hair with difficulty. He was more and more influenced by the plane. Yi Yuxuan lowered his eyes and said softly, "If you can't bear it, let's go get a marriage certificate tomorrow, okay?" Wei Weibai trembled and quickly said, "No, no, 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 I'm just kidding." Yi Yuxuan's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. Although he was rejected, he knew how she was like. If she didn't really like him, she wouldn't make such a request. Yi Yuxuan pretended not to know her dilemma. He calmly carried her, walked to the room, and put her back on the bed. His handsome face was very calm. He covered her with the quilt and looked at her embarrassed red face. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. The is at https://m.sashu.com/. Chapter 2239. You can search Transmigration System, Adonis, you can come to Sashu.com on Baidu to find the. I know you're joking. It's late, go to sleep. Bai Weiwei was somewhat vexed as she hid under the quilt. Her two round eyes were revealed, revealing a hint of cleverness. She had always been like this. No matter what happened, she would always be very lively after she recovered. She glared at the good man Yi Yuxuan and wondered if she was too abrupt. After all, her moral bottom line was a little low, but it didn't mean that Yi Yuxuan was low too. Wei Weibai could only comfort herself that at least Xian Xian was a good and responsible man. Yi Yuxuan's eyes turned, and no one knew what he was thinking. His fingers slowly closed her eyes. Wei Weibai was puzzled. What's wrong? Yi Yuxuan said, don't look at me like that. His voice was a little hoarse, which made him sound especially lazy and sexy. I'll regret it. Wei Weibai was about to say that it was not too late to regret it. However, Yi Yuxuan was very calm and covered her mouth with his other hand. He was really afraid of her reckless personality. Wei Weibai didn't dare to move, knowing that Yi Yuxuan was serious. She sighed to the system. Look, this is a good man. The system also sighed. Maybe your charm is gone. After all, a beauty is no different from a sow, not to mention that you're lying in bed all day. You don't have a filial son, and you're not even his mother. Today was also a day where it spared no effort to discredit the male lead. Wei Weibai, who had turned into a pig, she suddenly felt that the system made a lot of sense. Could it be that she had been sick for so long that Yi Yuxuan no longer had feelings for her? Wei Wei Bai reached out and pulled Yi Yuxuan's fingers away, her eyes bright and fierce. Yi Yuxuan, you, however, she saw the man in front of her leaning against the bed, his delicate eyes showing a hint of gentleness. He nodded faintly with an indescribable affection. She couldn't say what she wanted to say. After all, Yi Yuxuan didn't look like he was sick of her. She froze for a few seconds and suddenly muttered, "Wait for me." Yi Yuxuan was silent for a few seconds, his calm eyes showed a hint of a smile. Then he said softly, "I've been waiting for you all this time." He's been waiting for a long time. Bai Weiwei suddenly showed a brilliant smile. "Wait until I'm in good health, okay?" Yi Yuxuan nodded, his voice light and forbearing. "All right." Bai Weiwei reached for a yard after getting an inch. "You're not allowed to look at other women until I'm well." She could be called selfish. She couldn't deny the throbbing in front of this man. She didn't even know when she started to look for him the moment she woke up. She even started to worry about his feelings. Because of the plain strategy, she didn't even dare to go further with him. Wei Wei Bai wasn't someone who liked to lie to herself. But in front of him, she lied to herself again and again. She didn't have that many feelings for him. So she couldn't confess yet. She couldn't accept him. She couldn't confirm a relationship with him. She didn't have the right. Yi Yuxuan pursed his thin lips. Not only women, but also men and aliens. Wei Wei Bai added, not only people, but cats and dogs too. Didn't some weird people marry their pet dogs? Yi Yuxuan was very indulgent. He nodded calmly and seriously. Okay. Bai Weiwei smiled, her eyes curved, as cute as a puddle of the first moon. The system was a little speechless at this pair of kindergarten children. // Chapter 2240. A man and a woman who fell into the river of love. There was so much water in their brains that their IQ was gone. Wei Wei Bai saw his promise and was afraid that he would feel that he had taken a loss. She immediately said, "My body will recover soon. Wait for me." She did not dare to say anything now. But her body was much better now. Wait for Xiaomin to come. She would definitely come back. Then, it would be her turn to take the initiative. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were shining like stars. Yi Yuxuan stared at her for a long time, his fingers gently holding her hand. Then he said in a low voice, "I'm waiting for you." Actually, she did not need to keep emphasizing. He would always wait for her. No matter how far she went or how long she walked, he would wait. He would even chase after her. So don't be afraid, Wei Wei. Wei Wei Bai smiled as expected. She kept looking at him, so serious and happy. Finally, her voice was soft, "I'm sleepy, Xian Xian." Yi Yuxuan's voice softened, "I'm not leaving. Good night." Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes and said to the system, "Let's go. I need to get more life points." The system said, "Why don't you ask me if I got enough life points from Yi Yuxuan?" Wei Wei Bai said, "There's no need to ask. It's definitely full." The system, it was really full. This time, the life points she could take was 8,500. This was the maximum amount of HP she could sustain. Yi Yuxuan gave her more than this. It was a pity that she could not get it. The system reached out. In the pale light, her soul was slowly taken out of her body. Yi Yuxuan watched from the side. Finally, when the system took Wei Wei Bai's soul into its arms, Yi Yuxuan's gentle expression returned to its usual cold and calm. "You go first. I'll try to follow you later." He tried again and again. There would be a day. Not only in the real world, but in those strange worlds, he could also protect her. After hearing this, the system almost burst into tears. You still want to follow me? If someone like Yi Yuxuan were to follow them, she would destroy the entire plane. The system could only advise, can you control your power a little? That world was destroyed the last time. You can come over, but you have to suppress your power. When Yi Yuxuan heard the word power, she seemed to be in a trance. Then, he looked at his fingers as if he was thinking about what kind of terrifying power he had. The system had already taken advantage of Yi Yuxuan's distraction to grab Wei Wei Bai's soul and run away. He was afraid of Big Boss Yi. This guy is the real Yi Outyin. Otherwise, I wouldn't know. Once he was given a hint, he could do anything. He was a system, and Wei Wei was a host. The two of them together were not even enough to be crushed by a single finger of the other party. How sad. By the time Yi Yuxuan looked up, the golden light had disappeared. The system also left. Yi Yuxuan was silent for a long time before he took out the sleeping pills. Then, he swallowed a large amount of pills. This time, he would sleep a little longer and see if he could follow them. His physical fitness was a bit special. The sleeping pills that could let people sleep for a day were only enough for him to sleep for a few hours. Last time, he also added a large amount of pills for 8 hours. It was estimated that ordinary people would sleep for 2 or 3 days without a problem. Yi Yuxuan was not afraid that he would have a problem if he took too many sleeping pills. He was afraid that if Qin Qiu saw it, he would take the initiative to take him to the hospital to have his stomach pumped. Yi Yuxuan lay down beside Wei Wei Bai. When he was about to close his eyes, he thought of something, reached out and hugged Wei Wei Bai into his arms, then sighed comfortably and slowly closed his eyes to sleep. Collections below to record the reading record. Chapter 2241. When Wei Wei Bai woke up, she found herself sitting on a rosewood chair with an opaque veil on her face. In front of her was a wooden table with all kinds of booklets on it. There was also a priceless jade paperweight and a pen holder. There was a young servant beside her, politely grinding ink in silence. The faint scent of sandalwood wafted out from the beautiful incense burner. Where was this? Wei Wei Bai held the pen in her hand quietly and looked at the traditional characters on the booklet. It had been a long time since she saw these characters, so she was unfamiliar with them. However, she was someone who had experienced many ancient planes. Soon, she familiarized herself with the characters again and looked at what was written on it. This was an impeachment booklet for embezzlement in the disaster relief funds this year. She looked at the rest of the booklets, they were all about national affairs. Wei Wei Bai asked the system, "Am I the Empress in this plane?" The system said, "I'm searching for information, I found it, catch." Wei Wei Bai's head was heavy and painful, she could not help but reach out to rub her head. The young servant immediately wiped his fingers with a handkerchief and said softly, "Your Highness, I'm sorry to offend you." After saying that, the delicate and pretty teenager reached out and rubbed her temples. Wei Wei Bai was digesting her memories, so she forgot to reject him. In this plane, her identity was the eldest princess. This identity was especially awesome. Because the emperor was weak, he did not care about politics for a long time, so it was the empress who was in charge. The only child of the empress was the eldest princess, Wei Wei Bai. As the eldest daughter of the empress, she was the only child of the empress. Wei Wei Bai's identity was naturally very honorable. In addition, she was carried on the empress's lap since she was young, sitting in the court to listen to national affairs. When she grew up, she was even more powerful. When Wei Wei Bai transmigrated, it was just when the court was in turmoil. The empress died of illness at the beginning of the year, and the emperor's health was not as good as before. The imperial physician said that the emperor could not survive this winter. Bai Weiwei's greatest reliance was her imperial concubine mother. In the end, the empress died, and those princes who were suppressed by the empress began to stir, wanting to kill Weiwei Bai. In addition, the emperor was almost done for. Weiwei Bai's brothers were already preparing to seize power. They were waiting for the emperor to pay his respects so that they could succeed. Of course, they were fighting for power in this plane. Usurping the throne, fighting for power, and so on. Weiwei Bai was not surprised. After all, having a high status meant that the strategy had many layers of protection. But this time, the original owner of the eldest princess had a problem that made her mouth twitch uncontrollably. Lustful. It was one thing for her to like men, but she was allergic to men. What kind of problem is this? Wait, allergy. Bai Weiwei suddenly noticed that her skin was beginning to itch unbearably, and little red dots began to appear. She opened her eyes and frowned. The little attendant who was massaging Weiwei Bai's head also noticed that something was wrong and immediately looked at the red spots on her skin in shock. He was so scared that he knelt down. Your Highness, this servant will immediately call the imperial physician. Weiwei Bai wanted to say that it would be fine to just apply some ointment. This little waiter was new. Because of his handsome appearance, the original owner had placed him by her side as an ink grinder. So this little attendant did not know about her allergy. But before she could say anything, someone suddenly reported from outside the door. Your Highness, Commander Li has arrived. Weiwei Bai faintly raised her eyebrows and said in a tone that suited her character, let him in. The study's door was opened. A figure against the light came in, tall and slender. Slash. Chapter 2242. Weiwei Bai was dazzled for a moment. By the time she could see clearly, that person was already kneeling on one knee in a submissive and respectful manner. Your Highness, this official is here to greet you. The voice was clear, like spring water hitting a rock, like the wind blowing through the clouds. It was indescribably pleasant to hear. Weiwei Bai felt her ears go numb from the teasing. She was about to let him stand up. But she saw that Commander Li had already raised his head. His indifferent eyes held a gentle smile. His long and narrow eyelashes were delicate like a girl's, but without a trace of femininity. His fair face actually had a pure smile on it, making him look young and tender. But his movements were nimble and abnormally vigorous, full of masculine vigor. Clean and beautiful, with a youthful wildness, like a beast hiding its claws. Information about him flooded Weiwei Bai's mind. Liamo military commander, handsome and sweet-tongued, ruthless and merciless, and loved power the most. The original owner was attracted to his beauty, so she hooked up with him a few days ago. Today, he had come to ask if he was willing to be her guest in her room. Weiwei Bai's eyes twitched. She was about to say something. But she heard Li Mo's seductive voice, which made her blush, ring out with a smile. Your Highness, this official has been tossing and turning restlessly these past few days because of my longing for your Highness. Only today did this official muster up the courage to meet your Highness. Weiwei Bai, this familiar flattering tone, the indifference in Li Mo's eyes disappeared, leaving only pure and passionate joy. This official is also pleased with your Highness. It is this official's honor to receive your Highness' favor. Ding, discovered target Li Mo. This mission is to obtain Li Mo's love. Target, Li Mo completion, 0, time, tentative. What the hell is tentative? Weiwei Bai was about to ask the system. But she saw that Li Mo had already stood up. His face looked young and innocent, but his body was faintly robust. He walked up slowly. His steps were steady and carried with them a lithe strength. His posture was incomparably graceful, and his eyes under his thick eyelashes were like the scorching sun, carrying a kind of heart-pleasing passion. He carried an imperceptible strength, but also a perfect flattery to please, and just happened to hold by Wei Wei's fingers. This was an exceptionally bold and presumptuous move. But Wei Wei Bai's allergic red spots had not faded yet. Her fingers were held by him, and she felt as if she had entered a furnace. The temperature of his body was unusually hot. Li Mo's beautiful eyelashes fluttered at the right time, his eyes revealing traces of heartache. "Your Highness, why is your skin?" Wei Wei Bai remained calm and was about to respond. However, he felt a wave of heat entering his body from her cold fingertips. Soon, the red spots on her skin disappeared. After reading the information, she knew that Li Mo's martial arts were very powerful and could be considered the number one in this world. And this was one of the important reasons why the host liked him. Besides his beauty, it was also because Li Mo was the first man she wasn't allergic to. Occasionally, when they brushed past each other, the host would step on the corner of her skirt and hit Li Mo. Although Li Mo quickly retreated, the host still noticed. There were no allergic symptoms on her skin. Now Wei Wei Bai found that he was even more amazing. Not only did he not make her allergic, he could even treat allergies. Bai Wei Wei's eyes softened as she looked at him. Li Mo's thin lips pursed, revealing a pure and bright smile. "Your Highness, looking at you is like looking at the beautiful peach blossom I planted outside the door. Every time I look at it, it's the fragrance of longing." Wei Wei Bai. Fast to facilitate your next reading, you can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. Fast, comma. Chapter 22:43. His words were so awkward and sweet. She had always been the one to make others feel awkward and sweet. This was the first time she saw her target rush to please her. Wei Wei Bai was about to cry tears of gratitude. Then she heard the system's notification. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -20. Additional, the male lead's disgust for you is like seeing a rat corpse in the corner full of poisonous mushrooms. Wei Wei Bai, did the main system's notification also become a spirit? Ever since Si Bao became a virtuous housewife, she hadn't heard such a vicious evaluation in a long time. Li Mo's fingers gently stroked her fingertips. He seduced her without batting an eyelid. Under the smile in his eyes was a deep and cold ruthlessness. "Your Highness, this official's eyes hurt every time I see you. Because your Highness's beautiful radiance is too dazzling." Gently, those soft and fair fingers pressed against his lips. Li Mo's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness and surprise. But he heard the soft and light voice of the ugly woman in front of him who always wore a veil. "It's only when this consort sees your glib tongue that my eyes hurt. It hurts so much." There was a trace of teasing in her words, as if they were very familiar with each other. Then Wei Wei Bai released his lips and regained her calm and noble appearance. "Tonight, you," she didn't say it clearly, but everyone knew what she meant. Li Mo's eyes slightly narrowed, his thin lips still holding a smile. However, the endless coldness in his eyes had an additional trace of dangerous viciousness. But when he looked up again, there was only wild joy left in his eyes. This official understands. He was as happy as an innocent child. As if he was wild with joy because of her unspoken rules. His happiness at -20 was full of poisonous mushrooms. Wei Wei Bai lowered her cold eyes and said with a trace of gentleness in her voice, "Then you can leave." Li Mo respectfully retreated a few steps and bowed before reluctantly looking at Wei Wei Bai and turning to leave. When he was out of the door, the subordinates who followed him immediately brought over a wet and clean handkerchief. Li Mo's face was gloomy and cold as he wiped his fingers with a handkerchief. After wiping, he threw the handkerchief to his subordinate. Then he got into the carriage. Inside the carriage was another man. He looked a little older. He was dressed in white and looked as gentle and elegant as bamboo. It was Li Mo's strategist, Fang Qingyun. "What's wrong? How do you feel after seeing the princess?" Li Mo casually opened a pot of wine and drank it expressionlessly. "She asked me to be her gigolo tonight." Fang Qingyun calmly sipped her tea. "Isn't that good? Taking down the princess is equivalent to taking over half of the imperial family's power. When the time comes to support the youngest prince, this country will be in your hands." Li Mo was very straightforward. He liked power. He liked her by hook or by crook, so he set his sights on Wei Wei Bai. Once the empress died, the princess would be the best piece of meat. Whoever bites her would get it. Li Mo frowned. Who knows how ugly that woman is? She wears a veil every day. Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. The strategist was incomparably calm. "This is a necessary sacrifice. Use your beauty to conquer her." Li Mo's incomparably beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. Then he coldly smiled. "Get some drugs and fool her for a few nights." The coldness and viciousness in his words made people shudder. Ding, male lead -25. Hearing the goodwill notification, Wei Wei Bai and the system were silent. Finally, Wei Wei Bai said, "I felt that the target just now was a bit familiar." The system agreed. "I always felt like I saw you." Wei Wei Bai, no wonder they were so familiar. She was also like this when she was trying to curry favor with others. She cursed him in her heart, but her face was full of smiles. Looking at Li Mo's information again, he was a ruthless character. From an ordinary small official's house, he climbed all the way, using unscrupulous means and cold-hearted methods to climb to the position of a military commander. Now, to obtain the power of a civil official, he even sold his beauty to seduce her. She had no enmity with him, but he saw that her goodwill was -25. His heart was so cold that it was hard to believe. Bai Weiwei rubbed her chin, "So this time's target, although he has no enmity with me, is a very vicious and merciless character. It seems that I have to take advantage of his love for power to capture." Now that she had so much power, anyone who tried to curry favor with her would benefit. Wei Wei Bai touched the veil and felt that something was wrong. "Oh right, why am I wearing a veil?" There was no information. The system said, "Oh, because you're ugly." "Wei Wei Bai," the system said again. "But this time your reward is the world's most beautiful woman medal. Are you happy? Are you surprised?" Ha ha ha. It was rare to see the most beautiful woman medal in the supermarket, so he immediately bought it for Wei Wei Bai as a reward for the side mission. Wei Wei Bai slowly exhaled. The target of this world was asking for a beating. The system was asking for a beating too. Then she touched her face and was moved. Ah, such a beautiful face. Long time no see. The https://www.sashu.com/ the full text at https://www.sashu.com/ download text at https://www.sashu.com they at https://sashu.com there. Chapter 2244. The beauty medallion would change everyone's memories after it was used. When she started wearing the veil, she was still in her teens. She only started wearing the veil because her cheeks were scalded. There was a faint red mark on his face. Those who had seen her at that time would have their brains affected by the metal and would have a vague image of her changed appearance in their minds. Therefore, even if she took off her veil and revealed the face of a peerless beauty, No one would think that she was an imposter. A peerless beauty. Wei Wei Bai was holding a mirror and looking at herself like a dog. Sway sway, look at me. Do I look good? All of you, look at me. Don't you think I'm extremely beautiful? He, oh, the system couldn't take it anymore. You better stop before you go too far. If you continue like this, I'm going to take it back. Wei Wei Bai hugged the mirror tightly and quickly said, "Are you jealous of my beauty?" The system hugged its head in despair. It shouldn't have softened its heart. It shouldn't have thought that she liked handsome looks. He had used his own savings to buy this toy for her. Wasn't it just 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth? No matter how beautiful you are, how many eyes can you have? How many flowers can you bloom? The host would hold a mirror and laugh foolishly for most of the night. Those who didn't know would think that it was haunted. Wei Wei Bai looked at her face in the mirror again and sighed, "I have to look more today. I won't look like this tomorrow." The system couldn't help but say, "This thing has a shelf life of a plane. As long as you're in this plane, you'll always be like this. Other than natural aging, it won't change." And because it was more expensive, it aged slower than the average person. Wei Wei Bai touched her left cheek. There was a red mark there. It was no wonder that the original owner had to wear a veil. In ancient times, there was no scar removal or plastic surgery. There was a large red mark on his face, and it was of different shades. His originally delicate face was now ugly. Of course, after using the beauty medallion, his appearance changed and the mark disappeared. Wei Wei Bai thought for a while and finally endured the heartache. "Give me a mark, the kind that's extremely beautiful, the kind that's especially light?" Wei Wei Bai explained, "I don't have anything on my face. Why would I wear a veil for so many years? I can't make my face perfect like this all of a sudden. It's too illogical." The character of this princess was considered to be rather arrogant. If she had such a face, why would she wear a veil? Therefore, there had to be a mark. The system said, "Oh, okay. Stick your face here and I'll apply some scar cream for you." Bai Weiwei's face was tilted up, and the system was just about to give her some faint red marks that couldn't be seen. The host immediately turned his face back and hugged the mirror to look at himself. "Wait, let me take a few more looks. I haven't seen enough yet." He regretted giving her that beautiful face. The host was a person who was obsessed with looks. She couldn't even move when she saw a beautiful face. How was he going to conquer her? Wei Wei Bai suddenly said, "Tongzi, why don't I change the target?" He suddenly didn't want to listen. As expected, Wei Wei Bai giggled and said, "If it were me, I'd conquer myself. I'm so beautiful, the conquering would definitely be sweet." As expected. Then, the system silently pulled out a small blanket and covered his head. Slash. Chapter 2245. Let Bai Weiwei hold the mirror and lick it herself. Suddenly, he sensed something and reminded, "Your target is here." Wei Wei Bai's fawning expression disappeared in an instant, replaced by a cold, noble, and elegant dragon expression. She put on the veil. She stuffed the mirror under her pillow. Then she got off the bed and pounced on the couch like a hungry wolf. She rested her cheek on one hand and laid horizontally on the couch, her legs wrapped in the long dress. She even pulled up the hem of her dress to reveal one leg. Indifferent, noble, cool, and a little seductive. Wei Wei Bai said in a calm and noble tone, "I'm ready." System, no matter how many times it saw it, it would be shocked by the host's actions. It hadn't even been 3 seconds since he opened his mouth. As expected, the steady footsteps came from outside the door, and then there was a knock on the door. Then, a low and slightly hoarse voice sounded. "Your Highness, I'm here to pay my respects." Bai Weiwei reached out and unhurriedly adjusted her hairpin. Then she lowered her eyes and said, "Come in." The door opened slowly. Under the dim yellow light, Li Mo's smiling expression was very pleasing. He unhurriedly knelt on one knee and saluted in a casual manner. "Your Highness, I saw that the rain was thin and the night was cold. I was worried if your Highness's bed was cold, so I rushed to warm your Highness's bed," he said with a smile. His eyes were covered by shadows, but the pleasant smile at the corner of his mouth was so clear. And he hid a few bottles of medicine in his sleeve. There were deadly ones, and hallucinogenic ones. There must be one bottle that could satisfy this ugly woman. So Li Mo smiled even more happily. Weiwei Bai's eyes were half closed, her black pupils reflecting the light of the fire. She spoke softly, with a lazy voice that was not usually there. Soft, sweet, and reserved. "Raise your head." Although she was definitely ugly, her voice was beautiful. Li Mo's eyes darkened, the shadows in his deep eyes added a trace of dangerous darkness. He blinked, letting the pleasing smile appear in his eyes, then immediately raised his head with a respectful and pure expression. "Your Highness." His voice softened, and there was even some obvious affection hidden in his eyes. "Weiwei Bai, this pleasing little puppy look, damn, why was it so similar to when she was a little white flower? Could it be that people with good acting skills were all the same?" Li Mo looked lovingly at the veiled girl in front of him. This was the first time he was so close to her. After all, she was known to be ugly, anyone who got close to her would have to hide the disgust in their eyes. So Li Mo didn't deliberately. Until now, he was so close to her. The tip of his nose caught a whiff of a faint, soft fragrance. Not the smell of incense. Instead, it was the beautiful aura that seeped out of her skin. It was as clean and beautiful as flowers blooming in the morning after the rain. Li Mo pretended to be harmless, but now there was a hint of aggression in his eyes. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -20. Li Mo looked for a long time, then his eyes suddenly trembled. He was looking at Weiwei Bai non-stop, looking at her feet. https://www.sashu.com/read the full article. https://www.sashu.com download the full article. https://www.sashu.com read the full article. https://sashu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 2246. Could it be that he was one of those foot fetishes? Li Mo suppressed his throbbing heart and maintained a flattering smile on his face. "Your Highness, the night is cold. Why don't you let me warm your feet?" Warm feet, just as he said it, Li Mo wanted to hit himself. He had stared at Weiwei Bai's feet for too long. The moment he opened his mouth, he wanted to touch her feet. But he still had to do what he had to do. Princess Royal's power and connections from the deceased empress. It was enough for him to use Weiwei Bai and step on her power to climb up. He spent so many years to climb to the center of power. From now on, no one would dare to humiliate him, and it would be his turn to humiliate others. The youth's eyes, which were as beautiful as a cat's, flashed with a trace of greed for power. He reached out with his slender fingers and gently unbuttoned his clothes. Just as he was about to take off his coat and take out the medicine bottle, a hand gently pressed on the back of his hand. The soft fingers were so fragile that they could break with a pinch, but it made his movement stop. Li Mo's breath stopped and he showed that familiar flattering smile. Your Highness, are you dissatisfied with Li Mo? Acting spoiled at the right time, he almost sprawled on the recliner and looked up at his cute face, showing a pitiful expression. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be stunned by his expression. She was stunned for a few seconds before sighing. Then she reached out and gently rubbed his head. Soft and smooth hair slid through her fingers, making Li Mo's body stiffen. This was his Achilles heel. He had never allowed anyone to touch it. If someone else touched his head, it would be strange if he didn't smash their head. But when he remembered that it was Princess Royal and it was comfortable, he let it go. Li Mo secretly grimaced, but heard the girl's calm voice with a trace of pleasure. Let's go. Li Mo was at a loss. Go. Go where? Oh, could it be the bed? But then he saw the girl in front of him elegantly get off the recliner and put her feet into the delicate silk-embroidered shoes. She stood up and calmly extended her hand in front of Li Mo. Li Mo was stunned for a moment before regaining his senses. He immediately stood up and extended his hand for her to hold. Wei Wei Bai walked out. It was drizzling outside, and the night rain was cold. When Li Mo saw her step out, he immediately reached out and grabbed the umbrella by the door. He then opened it. The umbrella completely covered Wei Wei Bai's body. The entire way was illuminated by lanterns. The noble and quiet girl did not speak a single word. Li Mo didn't dare to say anything. He had all sorts of strange guesses in his mind. Could it be that other than liking all kinds of men, the eldest princess also had many strange fetishes? She still liked the wild. Li Mo gave Wei Wei Bai a strange look. However, he found that the veiled girl suddenly paused. They stood under the porch, and a delicate fragrance wafted through the rain. Wei Wei Bai suddenly smiled, and there was a hint of relaxed joy in her words. Look, the epiphyllum has bloomed. Li Mo looked over and found that the corridor was filled with epiphyllum. Beautiful flowers, white and majestic, trembled slightly in the rain. Li Mo was speechless. That was why she asked him to come in the middle of the night. He had already prepared the medicine and planned to blackmail Wei Wei Bai. In the end, she just wanted him to come and look at the flowers with her. Wei Wei Bai whispered, "Is it pretty?" Li Mo immediately showed a fake smile. Of course it's pretty. This is the princess flower. You can't find anything prettier in the world. Chapter 2247. Bai Weiwei laughed softly. This mouth of yours, why are you so dishonest? Li Mo immediately said, Your Highness, this official is the most honest. This official doesn't know how to smooth talk. I only know how to tell the truth. Bai Weiwei was silent for a moment, in the rain that filled the sky. Under the rain, she suddenly sighed, I have seen more beautiful flowers. Li Mo smiled, what is it? This official has not seen the world and also wants to hear how beautiful those rare treasures are. Bai Weiwei gently glanced sideways at him. Her calm and clean eyes held a few more traces of softness. These focused, affectionate, and beautiful eyes. It made Li Mo's smile stiffen. Her eyes were exceptionally beautiful. They were crystal clear and contained a gentle smile. It is indeed a treasure, she said softly. In this world, I have never seen a more beautiful flower or a more beautiful person. Li Mo's smile stiffened. His heart was touched. It was indescribably ticklish. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -10. Wei Wei Bai was not surprised at such a simple increase in favorability. Because there was no deep hatred between them. Li Mo only wanted power. His malice towards her came from thinking that she wanted to give herself to him. So as long as she didn't do anything excessive to him, the favorability would naturally increase. More importantly, only he knew how to be sweet. She also knew how to be sweet. Who could be sweeter than who? She was also a little cutie who could open her mouth and say sweets. As expected, Liemo smiled awkwardly for 2 seconds. Then, he reacted almost immediately. He said with a smile, "Your Highness really makes this official feel bad, but this official feels." Liemo's eyes focused. His voice was hoarse and lingering. "You are the most beautiful person in the world." These words were said with deep affection. Wei Wei Bai heard this and put some strength in the fingers on the back of his hand. Her noble and elegant outer shell had a bit of softness and shyness. Liemo's eyes deepened. He knew that this level of flattery was enough. He didn't say anything and just silently accompanied Wei Wei Bai to look at the flowers. The two of them stood quietly under the porch, and he held the umbrella. Liemo calmly sized up Wei Wei Bai. However, he saw that the corners of her eyes were a little red. She was beautiful and indescribably beautiful. And she was very petite. Under the gorgeous dress, her back was so thin that it looked like it would be blown away by a gust of wind. Liemo raised an eyebrow. Definitely not. The process of picking vegetables and testing for poison in the palace was really not something that a normal person could endure. By the time it was time to eat, the food was already cold. Even the princess's body was so small, so cute. Bah, she was just an ugly girl, why did he find her cute? Liemo hastily brainwashed himself. Wei Wei Bai suddenly pressed the back of his hand. "Let's go back." Liemo hurriedly lowered his head and said in a low voice, "Yes, Your Highness." Was the main course going to be served after looking at the flowers? Liemo accompanied Wei Wei Bai back to the door. She stood at the door with a smile in her eyes. "I'm very happy tonight. Thank you for accompanying me to admire the flowers, Commander." Liemo smiled warmly and cutely. "It is my duty to accompany Your Highness to admire the flowers." Wei Wei Bai's eyes softened. She let go of his hand. "It's already late." Liemo weighed the medicine bottle in his sleeve and was about to say, "It's late, we can do it now." In the end, he heard the princess say gently, "Commander, go back and rest." Liemo. To make it easier for you to read next time, you can click Save below to record this reading. Chapter 2248. He was just short of taking off his clothes, yet he had to listen to this. Wei Wei Bai turned around, her voice gentle, "This consort won't see you off, Commander. You can go back." Liemo's expression was sluggish, but he still reacted and kneeled. This subject will take his leave." He knelt in a deadlock for a while, only to find that she didn't call out to him. Liemo could only purse his lips, feeling wronged. He was like an abandoned dog, looking back 3 times with every step, but she didn't call out to him. When he was about to leave, he couldn't help but look back. Only to find Wei Wei Bai standing at the door, looking at him with gentle eyes. Her thin figure looked lonely and fragile under the light. Liemo was startled, but he quickly looked away and finally left. When he walked out of the door, he saw his own carriage and jumped in. He found his strategist drinking tea in the carriage, and out of boredom, playing Go with himself. Seeing Liemo, he calmly raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong? Did the princess drive you out? Is your skill bad, or was your drug discovered?" Liemo listened to his strategist's jinxed mouth and couldn't think of anything good to say. He coldly curled his lips. "You're the one who was driven out. This young master is so handsome, the princess can't wait to like me." Fang Qingyun paused in the middle of playing Go and looked up in surprise. "Don't you hate her? You used to be annoyed whenever she was mentioned. Why do you sound so happy this time?" Liemo pursed his lips and immediately went to find wine to hide it. He opened a pot of wine, then sneered, who's happy? I'm the one selling myself, not you. Happy my ass. I'm just impatient, do you understand? The white-clothed strategist was helpless against his temper. Then the princess didn't ask you to stay because she's tired of you. Liam took a sip of wine, showing an arrogant and proud smile. I found a secret. Strategist, what secret? Liam rubbed his chin and smiled. The princess definitely has a crush on me. Those little girl tricks, accompanying her to look at the flowers, saying he was handsome. She was obviously gloomy and meticulous. But she made him come late at night to do these simple things. And she seemed to be very happy. The experienced and knowledgeable Liam had a good grasp of the human heart even though he was still a virgin. If Wei Wei Bai didn't like him, why would she do that? Thinking about it this way, the princess had good taste, although she was a little ugly. But her feet were beautiful, her voice was beautiful, and her eyes were beautiful. Thinking about it this way, it didn't seem so annoying. Liam drank a mouthful of wine and suddenly recalled the way she looked up with reddened eyes. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, it was strangely seductive. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 0. Wei Wei Bai was wiping her feet. Her embroidered shoes couldn't stand the humidity, so she had been standing in the corridor for a long time. The rain soaked into his shoes. She heard the notification and said while yawning, "Do I look like I have a crush on you?" Narcissistic people love it when others have a crush on them, and they believe in them without a doubt. A guy like Liam, she could only express a little of her feelings. He must have thought that he was so handsome that everyone had to love him. The system looked at her with a different expression every second. Just a moment ago, she was still the incomparably noble eldest princess. Now, her actions were elegant and noble. Who was this big guy who was scratching her feet now? After Wei Wei Bai finished wiping her feet, she lazily crawled under the blanket. She was just about to sleep. Suddenly thinking of something, she opened her eyes and sat up. The system was shocked. What's wrong? But it saw Wei Wei Bai take out a mirror from under her pillow and continue touching her face. Ah, my beautiful face, my peerless face. The system, Wei Wei Bai's face was gloomy. What should I do? I can't sleep when I see this face. I'm worried that someone will steal it away when I fall asleep. The system. That's enough, go to sleep. Wei Wei Bai, everyone, am I beautiful? The system, he held his head in despair. Here it comes again. Why did he buy her a peerless face for a guy who was obsessed with looks? It was a disaster. Wei Wei Bai, system, the system flipped over, everyone, burn paper money. By Wei Wei. At the /crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www.sashu.com. Download Transmigration system, Adonis, come here and read this on your phone, https://m.sashu.com. The Transmigration system, Prince Charming, come over here. Chapter 2249. Bai Wei Wei licked the best quality divine face all night. Finally, she endured the pain and let the system apply a red mark on her face that was so light that it was almost invisible. Then she pretended to be a dog to deal with state affairs. The eldest princess wasn't an idiot, she was just too proud. Her ability couldn't compare to her mother. Only when her mother, this huge protective shield, died so many people dared to set their sights on her. Stepping on her to climb up, they could directly climb to the center of the imperial power and control the entire power structure. Who wouldn't be moved, especially at the most critical moment of seizing power? Several princes were eyeing the throne. Only with power in their hands could they stand in the imperial power. There were even many people with rebellious thoughts like Liam. stealing the princess's power and then supporting the 3-year-old prince to be the regent. Liamo was only the most powerful and thick-skinned of them all. As the military commander, his power was at the peak of the military officer group. In addition, he had always been victorious in his early years and was the leader of the army. But Liamo had a deep mind and left the army early to return to the imperial court. It was to reassure the emperor. But Wei Bai knew that Liamo still had a lot of people in the army. If it really came down to it and Liamo really wanted to rebel, he had the capital. In addition, every time the system asked her to capture someone, it was a proud son of heaven. So Wei Bai was very sure that someone like Liamo was the model of a protagonist. In the end, he could succeed in whatever he wanted. And he was narcissistic and proud, bursting with self-confidence. Powerful leadership and off-the-charts charisma. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so popular now. After all, in this dynasty, aristocratic status was very important. Liamo came from a small official's family and it was as hard as ascending to heaven to succeed with this identity. Wei Bai looked at the report while thinking about Liamo's personality. She had the system take care of everything on the report. Tongzi said. As long as she didn't hug the mirror and ask him if she was beautiful every day. He took care of all the chores. When Wei Bai thought of this, she suddenly said, "Little darling," the system trembled and immediately said, "You are very beautiful, the most beautiful person in the world. You are so beautiful that anyone who sees you would be blinded by your beauty. Are you satisfied? If you are, then don't ask." After being bombarded for 10 hours, it was a question of whether the host was beautiful or not. The system felt like its ears were about to rebel. Wei Bai was silent for a moment before saying, "I just want to ask you, what is Liamo doing?" The system turned to look at the male lead. "Oh, he's setting up a trap." Wei Bai asked, "A trap?" The system said, "They probably know that you're going to the temple to pray for blessings today, so they're trying to lure a few bandit leaders to rob your carriage." After listening, Bai Wei was deeply speechless. Finally, she said, "It smells like the blood of an old wine." A hero saving a damsel in distress, self-directed and self-acting. This technique was too familiar. Looking at Liamo was like looking at herself. The little white flower, Liamo. It was an indescribable feeling. Knowing that it was a trap, Wei Bai of course had to go take a look. Thus, after dressing up plainly and wearing a veil, she got on a luxurious carriage and headed to the most famous temple. Every month in the middle of the month, the eldest princess would go to the temple to pray for the sick emperor. However, the eldest princess rarely went herself. Most of the time, she would let the servants go and add incense money. Chapter 2250. This was also a show of respect, making people feel that she was filial. Wei Bai had just gotten on the carriage when a spy quickly spread the news. After the strategist received the news, he said to the youth behind him who was picking out clothes, "Seems like luck is on our side. This time, the Princess Royal is going in person. I thought I would miss again." After he finished speaking, no one behind him answered. Fang Qingyun turned around and saw Liamo with his back to him, hesitating. "Do you think I look better in silver or black?" Liamo suddenly picked up 2 sets of clothes and asked his strategist. The counselor was silent. Was his function to pick out clothes for his lord? Then Fang Qingyun sighed deeply, "Black then." Liamo's eyes lit up. "I also think black is good. It brings out my handsome and powerful side." Fang Qingyun said, "No, you still have to fight bandits later. Black is dirt resistant." "Liamo," Fang Qingyun said helplessly, "you love beauty so much. What if someone seduces you with beauty and you fall for it? Liam put the clothes on himself, his cold brows carrying a trace of wild disdain. Is there anyone in this world who is more beautiful than me? Fang Qingyun, Liam touched his face, look at me. Don't go against your conscience. I am so handsome that even the princess has a crush on me. Which beauty can seduce me? Fang Qingyun, he gave up on treating Liam was unfortunately a person who was obsessed with looks. Fortunately, this face-obsessed patient was only satisfied with her own looks. So there was no need to worry about someone seducing him with beauty. Liam put on his clothes and tied his belt. His thin waist and beautiful figure were like floating clouds in flowing water. He tied his high ponytail and casually picked up his bow and walked out. All right, I am going to fish for the princess. Wait for my good news. His voice was like a clear spring, full of vitality and unparalleled beauty. Fang Qingyun silently calculated his lord's assets. It was enough to fish for the princess. If one ignored Liam's ruthless, gloomy, cruel, and scheming heart. His appearance was indeed very good at fooling people. After all, anyone would like a pure and sunny person. Therefore, Fang Qingyun calmly opened the chessboard and slowly played Go. The imperial family was in a turbulent situation. While everyone was fighting for power and profit, he had to seek more benefits for his lord. And the princess was the best stepping stone. At Dean Temple, Wei Bai offered incense. The maidservant beside her immediately brought water over to help her wash her hands. After Wei Bai washed her hands unhurriedly, she wiped them clean with a handkerchief. She looked like an elegant member of the royal family. He was actually chatting with the system. Are there many bandits? The system replied, not a lot. After all, it's just a robbery. If it's too much, we'll need to mobilize the army. If it's too big, it won't do us any good. Wei Bai nodded and was about to say something. Suddenly, a few monks and guards ran in. Your Highness, please quickly go to the backyard. Bandits are attacking. She didn't bring many guards with her, so they couldn't stop the bandits' attack. Everyone's expression changed, but Wei Bai remained calm. The maidservant hid first, and the guards blocked the bandits. Then, she let the guards send out fireworks. After all this was done, the guards' screams could be heard, and the bandits' shouts could be heard. Wei Bai's expression changed, and she immediately ran to the backyard. Her long dress was like a cloud. The download the at https://m/com button at the bottom to record your reading record. Next time you open the bookshelf, you'll see it. If you like. Chapter 2251. Liam, who was following closely behind, killed a few bandits and ran into the temple from outside. He saw the back of Bai Weiwei's white dress and jade bracelet as she floated away. It was all planned out. He would land in front of the princess like a god and kill those bandits. But the princess only saw his back, she did not see his heroic side. Liam felt pity. He casually used his bow to hit the head of one of the bandits. Then his thin lips curled into a smirk. Run, I'll see where you can run to. She was just a clown who had a crush on him, obediently giving him her power. He could also give her some benefits, such as letting her feel his fingers. Wei Bai ran into the back of the mountain. It was full of osmanthus trees. The flowers were all in bloom this season. Bai Weiwei hid behind an osmanthus tree. She uneasily hugged herself with both hands, her pair of clear eyes containing a hint of panic. The system said, he's not here yet. Wei Bai said, let me get into character first, or else I'll laugh. The system, Wei Bai had just finished her words when she heard footsteps, heavy on purpose. She held her breath and hid behind the tree, not daring to move. Liam had already seen the corner of her dress, under his long eyelashes, those beautiful eyes did not have the usual gentle smile. Instead, it was a cold and gloomy predator. His thin lips curled into a malicious smile. He casually raised the bow in his hand, nocked an arrow, then turned around and casually shot a bandit who caught up. Sure enough, the bandit's scream made the girl behind the tree tremble. As if he wanted to destroy the mind of his prey, Liemo took the bandit's knife unhurriedly. Then he walked towards Wei Wei Bai's tree with heavy footsteps, slashing randomly with the knife. The swishing sound of the knife cutting through the trees was a real example of ruthlessly destroying flowers. It would be best if he could scare the princess and make her cry. When he appeared again, he would be like a hero. He would guarantee that the princess would hug him and cry and give herself to him. Liemo thought maliciously, slowly approaching the girl behind the tree. He threw the knife in his hand, and it hit the tree. Osmanthus flowers fell to the ground. The fragrance filled the air. But the girl behind the tree still did not dare to make a sound, as if she thought he was a bandit. Liemo did this on purpose. Only when he forced her into a state of fear, would he enter her heart. Liemo saw the corner of her dress, fluttering. He knew that she was really frightened. Unhurriedly, Liemo reached out with his slender fingers and adjusted his collar. Then he strode over and reached out to pull her out from behind the tree. But in the next moment, a sharp light's attack. It was a hairpin. After throwing the hairpin, she rushed forward without raising her head. Liemo gently raised his hand and held the hairpin between his ring finger and index finger. He smiled and tossed the hairpin into the air before casually tossing it into his sleeve. Then, like a tiger released from its cage, he rushed in front of Wei Wei Bai in a flash. His fingertips touched her hair, and his nose seemed to have smelled the fragrance of a young girl on her body. Liemo extended his arm and held her slender waist. He pressed her to the side of a huge osmanthus tree, reached out and grabbed her neck. He said coldly, "Speak, have you seen my princess?" This overbearing attitude and the urgency in his eyes made people feel his anger. Slash. Chapter 2252. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were filled with panic, a trace of mist in her beautiful eyes. Liemo's eyes flashed with surprise, followed by ecstasy. He quickly let go of his hand. "Your Highness, I found you." Then he hugged her in ecstasy, saying happily, "Are you all right, Your Highness? I heard the bandits were here, so I immediately came to find you." Wei Wei Bai's face behind the veil flashed a trace of embarrassment, the corners of her eyes slightly red. Her voice was trembling, "Put me down, how dare you?" Liemo then realized he wouldn't let go of her. He immediately let go, his face helpless. "Sorry, Your Highness, I was just. As he spoke, his eyelashes trembled, and his beautiful glass-like eyes were filled with pure passion. "I was just too worried about the princess." Wei Wei Bai stared at him blankly for a long time before looking away. Her face was faintly discernible under the veil, incomparably hazy. Liemo saw the blush on her ears. He narrowed his eyes, knowing his plan was about to succeed. Today's action would definitely make Wei Wei Bai take him seriously. But he still needed to get closer. This time, he would let Wei Wei Bai's liking for him turn into love. So he wouldn't have to rack his brains to see her again. So his ears twitched, a trace of coldness appearing on his face. "Your Highness, your servant has broken the rules." After saying that, he immediately rushed over and picked her up. The young girl's fragrance immediately lingered in his nose. It was really fragrant. Liemo couldn't help but lower his head and sniff her neck. Wei Wei Bai frowned, seeming a bit shy. Liemo then realized his actions were improper. He immediately covered up his shameless actions, stepping on the ground, carrying Wei Wei Bai and flying up a tree. hiding in the osmanthus flowers. His broad body covered her, pressing her into the branches. Among the osmanthus flowers, Lemo's handsome and exquisite beautiful face had a kind of quiet solemnity. "Shoo, the bandits are here. Let's hide." Wei Wei Bai was half lying down, her beautiful hair hanging down on the branches. Her pair of calm eyes had a few more traces of repressed feelings. She seemed to be a little shy and didn't look at his face. He simply averted his gaze and looked at Osmanthus. As if she was afraid that the bandits would hear, she didn't say anything either. Only when Liemo leaned on her body did he realize how delicate her body was. Her neck, which was half hidden under the collar, was as white as jade. Her beautiful collarbone line could only be faintly seen, but it was enough to make people feel how exquisite and stunning it was. Lemo's innocent and naive eyes couldn't help but darken a little. Suddenly, she whispered, "Have the bandits left?" Lemo's eyes trembled as he regained his senses. He stared at Wei Wei Bai's neck for a long time. Was he possessed? Liemo felt that his breath was filled with her fragrance, making it hard for him to breathe. He immediately let go of her and twitched his mouth. "Gone, gone, I'll carry you down." Wei Wei Bai nodded reservedly, then reached out and gently placed her hand on the back of his. Using his strength, she got up from the flowers, but in the next moment, her veil was hooked by the branches. Before she could react, her veil had already fallen. Liemo also regained his senses and saw her face. For a moment, he was stunned. Wei Wei Bai blinked innocently and suddenly realized that her veil was gone. Her face finally showed panic and she quickly covered her face with her sleeves, only revealing her eyes. "Don't look, it's ugly." Transmigration system, Adonis, come here for the https://www.sashu.com/transmigration system, Adonis, come here for the full text, https://www.sashu.com/transmigration system, Adonis, come here for the full text, https://www.sashu.com transmigration system, Adonis, come here for the full text, https://m/sashu.com//4. Chapter 2253. Lemo's eyes were incomparably deep. Even the sunny innocence he pretended to be was covered by that overwhelming gloominess. Before Wei Wei Bai could doubt him, he quickly put away the terrifying darkness. He smiled, "How could that be? Your Highness, you are the most beautiful person in the world." Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 10. This sentence was said from the bottom of his heart. Liemo had never said anything truer than this. Wei Wei Bai didn't believe it, smooth talker. Liemo smiled without saying anything, but took the veil. "I will put it on for you, Your Highness." Saying so, he could even be said to be strong, ignoring her resistance. Putting the veil on her face, she didn't know if his fingers did it on purpose or not. He rubbed her cheek with his fingertips. After putting the veil on, Liemo could finally suppress his predatory nature after being stunned. He said jokingly, "It is good for Your Highness to wear a veil, or else you will provoke many people to die for you." Wei Wei Bai smiled bitterly, "Okay, I know you are kind, but my face is already hurt, only you don't mind." Lemo's eyes flashed with surprise. "Hurt? Is she talking about the almost invisible mark on her face?" Like cherry blossoms, they bloomed faintly on her delicate face, which was like a blooming flower. Liemo knew his problem: beauty was seductive. He had always been arrogant, thinking that in this world, there was no one more attractive than himself. But, Liemo took a deep breath, suppressing the inappropriate thoughts in his heart. Power is the most important, power is the most important. After a dozen times, he stabilized his mind. Then he clumsily reached out. Your Highness, lean on me. Let's go down. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were clear, staring at him for a while. Looking at him, his face turned red. Then she gently reached out with both hands, wrapping them around his neck. Then she leaned her head on his chest. Liamo hugged a girl for the first time, and he was so helpless. He quickly collected his emotions and jumped down the tree with her in his arms. Then, he immediately put down Wei Wei Bai and jumped a few steps away. He had no intention of taking advantage of her at all. His breathing became heavier, and his fingers were clenched tightly. The spot on his chest where she was leaning on kept heating up. Wei Wei Bai stood in place. Her long dress fluttered like the clouds, and her posture was graceful. She was wearing a thin veil. When the wind blew, the outline of her beautiful face could be faintly seen. Liamo felt that those who called him ugly were blind. Even though she was wearing a veil, she was still very pretty. Wei Wei Bai heard the noise and looked back. They were the guards who had come to rescue him. Liamo saw it as well. He knelt according to the rules. Your Highness, the rescue team is here. I will take my leave first. Although he was here to save people, his sudden appearance here was actually against the rules. Wei Wei Bai lowered her eyes to look at him. Suddenly, she reached out and gently touched his hair. Liamo's back went numb and his body stiffened. Her fingertips lightly touched his hair, her voice clear and sweet. There are flowers in your hair. Liamo pursed his lips, forgetting all the sweet nothings he wanted to say. In the end, he could only force out a sentence. Then I will take my leave. Having said that, Liamo fled into the woods like a coward. Wei Wei Bai stood in place, holding the osmanthus flower in her hand. Suddenly, she laughed softly. Then, she turned and left. Liamo hid in the branches, his face expressionless. Only a pair of malicious eyes stared at her back as she left. Wei Wei Bai was as calm as ever. She sighed to the system. Sigh, another one bowed down to my peerless beauty. The system was speechless, embarrassed. Wei Wei Bai sighed. What should I do? I am so beautiful. It would be a waste to let anyone look at me. System, the next time I buy a peerless beauty for the host, I will kill myself. When Liamo returned, he saw that the strategist was already eating. He was not interested and climbed onto the couch. The strategist said indifferently, What, is the princess not interested in you? Liamo's back was facing the strategist, not uttering a word. The strategist said, Didn't you say you are loved by everyone? Liamo said, a bit uncomfortable. The strategist, ? Liamo said, My heart is racing. The strategist, could it be that he was interested in the princess? Liamo said, In this world, there is someone better looking than me. The strategist, Liamo said, Jealous. The strategist silently picked up a piece of bamboo shoot and ate it. This lord has a cat disease. Just bear with him for the sake of the sponsored food. To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 2254. After Wei Wei Bai returned, she killed all the bandits she caught. She also rewarded some of the guards who guarded the bandits well. In addition to silver, she also gave everyone a pure gold token, just like a silk banner in modern times. She gave them a reward as a memento. Liamo also received one. The youth's beautiful and delicate eyes were filled with a coldness that didn't match his harmless and pure appearance. He flicked the small piece of gold into his palm. The strategist glanced at him and knew that he had finally stopped acting up. Only then did he ask, "Then what do you plan to do next?" Li Mo's dark eyes flashed under his long and thick eyelashes. "Yes, Her Highness must have taken a fancy to me. Plus, I saw her face, so she treats me differently." Fang Qingyun sipped her tea unhurriedly and smiled, "Don't go too far. You'll cry if you become the prince consort." Li Mo raised his eyes and sneered, "Who wants to be the prince consort of Laozi?" The prince consort sounded good, but it was a pity that he would marry into the royal family. He couldn't be an official, couldn't have power, couldn't do anything, and was sullen. Li Mo supported his chin with one hand and stretched out his white fingertips. He sighed and placed a white piece, blocking the path of the black piece. The next piece will be to eliminate those eyesores one by one. The prince he was secretly supporting was the youngest, Bai Ning. He was only 3 years old, his mother was weak, and his family had no power. She was a palace maid, a prince who was still a baby. He was the best piece. So, Li Mo's eyes were cold, but the wild and beautiful light was still there. Recently, the third prince has been the most active. We have collected enough evidence of his corruption in Jiangnan and want to make a move on him. Fang Qingyun poured herself a cup of bamboo tea. "Oh, according to the plan." Li Mo's eyes narrowed, his thin red lips curling into a mocking smile. "Of course, I want to be the princess's guest and show her my loyalty. More importantly, I want to let the princess know that I want to start scheming to seize the imperial power for her, so that she can always be above everyone and live a life of riches and honor." His initial plan was to rely on the princess on the surface while secretly supporting the little prince. As for the princess, of course, he would kick her away after he had used her. Li Mo's mind inexplicably recalled the scene of the osmanthus flowers. Her veil had fallen, revealing her breathtakingly beautiful face. For a moment, he was stuck. Then, Li Mo reached out his finger and pressed hard against his eyes, trying to get rid of the temptation of her beauty. He was such a principled man. He would definitely not be seduced by beauty. Fang Qingyun saw her lord poke her eyes with her finger. Then, he continued to drink his tea in silence, pretending that he had not seen the whole process of his illness. Sigh, after all, the tea was made from the tip of a top-grade bamboo leaf. It was very expensive. 3 days after the bandit incident, Li Mo was planning how to make the princess like him more. Suddenly, a young waiter appeared. An invitation was delivered. It was the Grand Princess Flowing Goblet Hydrology Banquet. This banquet was held by the royal family and was held by the eldest princess every year. Apart from the members of the royal family, the rest were either the princess's confidants or people she admired. Li Mo held the invitation, his eyes dull as he tapped his fingers on the table. "Tell me, is the princess's impression of me a confidant or admiration?" The counselor glanced at him. "You're so lovable, it's probably admiration." To facilitate your next reading, you can click Save at the bottom to record your reading record. Chapter 2255. Li Mo's thin lips twitched, revealing a satisfied smile. The youth's color was very beautiful, and this smile added a bit of delicacy. Even the counselor gave him a strange look, as if some faint thoughts were emerging in his mind. Li Mo turned around to pick clothes. "Just admiring is not enough. The princess will be my scapegoat, or willingly be my stepping stone. I want to be the best person in her heart." For some reason, this sentence. It contained a kind of determination that made the counselor uneasy. Or even, bigotry. Fang Qingyun looked at Li Mo, only to find him tall and straight, carrying a large pile of clothes. "Counselor Fang, quickly use your unparalleled intelligence and help your lord choose clothes. Is black good? It highlights my white, cold, and handsome skin. Red suits my charming appearance. Red suits my jade-like appearance. White suits my jade-like appearance. Counselor Fong, today was another difficult day to survive. In the end, Liamo still chose a black outfit. A dark patterned belt wrapped around his thin waist, accentuating his beautiful and robust figure. He rode his horse to the princess's residence. When he arrived, not far from the gate, he saw a familiar figure standing there. Light-colored flowing gauze dress, indifferent and calm eyes, containing thousands of stars. She seemed to be stunned when she saw him, but those calm and indifferent eyes had a hint of joy. This smile that appeared in the depths of her eyes stunned Liamo. He just remembered his mission to seduce the princess. Before he could show the perfect smile that he had practiced so many times. He saw that Wei Wei Bai had already left without hesitation, accompanied by a maid. That figure was thin, lonely, and exceptionally beautiful. Liamo's smile froze. She ran when she saw him. He dismounted and the manservant immediately rushed over. The servants leading the horses couldn't help whispering. Why was the princess standing at the gate? I don't know. Was she waiting for someone? How could that be? Besides His Majesty, who is qualified to make the princess wait? Liamo was silent for a while, then suddenly lowered his eyes and couldn't help but smile. His little princess was waiting for him. The Chu Shui Shui was near the lake in the princess mansion, and it led the water into a small stream of crushed stones. There were resting areas set up in every corner. Most of them were sitting on mats with small long tables with brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones on them. The banquet was held elegantly. The princes had arrived early and were chatting and drinking. Those who didn't know better would think that they were all brothers, but those who knew better knew that these princes all wanted to stab each other to death. When Liamo arrived, he saw some powerful civil officials. A few princesses of the royal family, as well as a bunch of unsightly princes. He was out of place here. After all, no military official had ever been present at the eldest princess's banquet. Many people were surprised to see him. Especially the third prince. His body was hollowed out by wine and meat, and his eyes were cloudy. Oh, isn't this our Commander Li? Let this king take a look. Are you regretting your decision? Is that why you chased after me to seek refuge? Third prince's eyes were filled with malice as he sized up Liamo's delicate yet not feminine face. He had never seen that woman or that man as beautiful as her. Last time they met in Jiangnan, Liamo had beaten him into a pig's head. He only wanted him to serve him for one night, yet he dared to treat him like this. If not for the fact that he couldn't find any evidence of him beating him up, and that the royal family was in turmoil, he would have killed Liamo. Chapter 2256. When Liamo saw the third prince, he sneered, "This humble subject is inferior. How would I dare to pledge allegiance to the honorable third prince?" Even if the third prince was a fool, he could hear the ridicule in Liamo's tone. He fumed, "Liamo, I gave you face, but you don't want it. This prince will not rest until you are dead." Liamo twitched his fingers, wanting to hit someone. But in this situation, it was his chance to enter the civil service. He wanted to perform well and win over a few good civil servants. But it was all ruined by this idiot. Liamo was just about to coldly observe, waiting for an opportunity to kick the third prince into the lake to suffer a little. But the third prince used his status to draw his sword and charge at Liamo. He knew Liamo wouldn't dare to do anything to him in this situation. If he dared to act up, he would immediately be charged with the crime of assassinating a prince and his family would be exterminated. The third prince's sword was about to hit him. Suddenly, a voice as cold as ice spoke. "Third brother, stop." The third prince paused. Liamo took the chance to retreat a few steps and turned to see the girl standing in the corridor, quietly watching him. Her raven hair fell to her shoulders and a blooming osmanthus flower was pinned to her hair. She was like a fairy under the osmanthus flower, even if she was wearing a veil. Her figure was also graceful, and her temperament was noble and indifferent. The third prince saw Wei Wei Bai and immediately showed a flattering smile. "Sister, aren't I teaching a disobedient servant a lesson?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him coldly, her eyes as sharp as knives. Her voice was cold and ruthless. "Servant. The person this princess personally invited is just a disobedient servant in third brother's eyes." The third prince was also afraid of this sister. When the empress was alive, she taught them a hard lesson. The emperor doted on his only legitimate princess even more. No matter how fiercely the princes fought, no one dared to step over Wei Wei Bai's head. Even if the empress had passed away, Wei Wei Bai's power was enough to make her superior. The third prince immediately cowered. "Eldest sister, it's all younger brother's fault." "It's all because of this lowly." Wei Wei Bai's expression was incomparably cold. She sternly interrupted him, "Since you know you're wrong, you have to accept the punishment. Otherwise, outsiders will think that the imperial family willfully indulged you, resulting in such a hedonistic personality." After saying that, her eyes were cold and full of noble aura. "Someone, push him into the lake for me to calm down." The third prince turned pale with fright. "Sister." Unfortunately, before he could beg for mercy, the eldest princess' loyal guards had already rushed over. He pressed the third prince into the lake. Suddenly, the third prince's screams rang out. Liamo stood to the side in a daze. He had always known that the eldest princess was overbearing and decisive. She had grown up on the lap of the former empress, who had been in charge of politics behind the curtain for 20 years. In the imperial family, he was a ruthless figure who kept his word. But he didn't know that when she was angry, she could be so efficient. He couldn't help but look at her, only to see that her expression was unusually indifferent, without a trace of emotion in her eyes. It was as if using this method to teach her younger brother a lesson was a very common thing. She seemed to have noticed something and lightly looked up. When she saw that it was him, the calmness in her eyes crumbled a little. She was a little shy. Then she gently turned her eyes away. Then she slowly walked over. Her thin figure was noble and cold, so no one dared to look at her. When Liamo reacted, the girl had already walked in front of him. Her voice was soft, completely different from her cold appearance just now. "Ollie, those who bully you will be punished." To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 2257. Her voice was so soft, it was like a gentle breeze, and only he could hear the warmth of it. It was so soft that it seeped into his bones. It made Liamo's heart beat a few times. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 15. Then the girl in front of him slowly reached out her hand. Without much thought, he had already extended his elbow, and her fingers just happened to touch his muscular arm. Wei Wei Bai's face was still indifferent. A waiter beside her had already hurriedly bowed to the guests who had come to attend the banquet and said, "My lords, Her Royal Highness said that today is a fine day, a good day for flowing water. Please take your seats." The third prince had already been dragged away like a dead dog. The eldest princess was famous for her domineering attitude. Even if it was her own brother, she dared to punish him. 20 years of the Empress's connections in the imperial court and the power of the imperial family. The aura of the eldest princess gave Wei Wei Bai enough prestige and power. When the Tsushui ceremony started, Liamo was already led to the second seat. And the first seat belonged to the eldest princess. The girl lazily leaned against the cushion, sitting on a straw mat with a cup full of wine at her feet. Liamo casually sat cross-legged, knowing that she arranged this seat for him. Many of the civil officials looked at him differently because he had obtained the favor of the eldest princess. And it was not the kind of favor of a guest. It was the kind that was truly cared for and protected by her. Liemo knew that when he went out tomorrow, the officials would definitely come to greet him. At that time, he would push Fang Qingyun out and enter the inner circle of the officials. Then he would be able to start building his own circle of influence. The eldest princess's power was so great, it was clearly what he wanted. But why? Li Mo's beautiful eyes carefully looked at Wei Wei Bai. He saw that she was holding a pen in her hand, writing something. White as snow fingers had an unhealthy luster, but they were exquisite and beautiful. Liemo slowly lowered his eyes, licking his lips in annoyance. Why was he not happy? Suddenly, he heard Wei Wei Bai's soft voice. The theme of today's song is love. Wherever the song stops, any poem or song with love as the theme is fine. The people who came to participate nodded and praised. Liemo had no interest in poetry. He was only here to fish for the princess. Today, the princess had already expressed how much she valued him. He had achieved his goal. Wei Wei Bai put the wine into the water, and the wine slowly flowed down. It walked in front of Liemo and spun around. The wine seemed to have a mechanism that could make people stop in front of someone. Liemo raised his eyebrows curiously. Suddenly, he saw a folded piece of paper in the basket. He quickly picked it up. The paper was spread open. It was a simple sentence. You are handsome and elegant. This concubine has admired you for a long time. It is easy to entrust a brocade book to you, but it is difficult to express my feelings. What she meant was, he was shockingly handsome, and the princess had been secretly in love with him for a long time. Today, she wrote a love letter to him, but she was worried that he would reject her. This was a confession. This must be a love letter. This must be it. Liemo was stunned. He had always suspected that the princess had a crush on him. But when his suspicions turned into reality, he was actually a little dazed. He held the paper in his hand and looked up at Wei Wei Bai. But he saw the girl lowering her eyes, not daring to look at him. That strong and cold side of him just now. Now, it was all a little girl's shyness and softness. Her beautiful brows were furrowed, and her eyelashes were trembling. Slash. Chapter 2258. Soft and fragile, as if one word from him could decide her life or death. Liemo's fingers holding the love letter turned white. He didn't know why. He wasn't happy at all. His chest felt heavy. He couldn't reject her. He had to continue lying to her. Liemo looked up with suppressed coldness in his eyes. He slowly curled his lips. I only have one thing to say about love. Liemo looked at Wei Wei Bai. His tone was casual and solemn. I love you, always and always. Then, he saw that the eyes of the girl in front of him were suddenly filled with joy and happiness. So beautiful that it was as if all the beauty in the world fell into her eyes. Liemo's lips trembled, even his breathing became irregular. He looked away, not knowing why his mood was so strange. It was obviously a scam. He was a ruthless hunter. But suddenly, he had a different feeling for his prey. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 20. Wei Wei Bai smiled, little brotherly took the bait. I told you that beauty can conquer the world. I just casually wrote a nonsensical poem and he confessed. System, he had already blocked words like beauty, peerless appearance, and beauty. So he couldn't hear anything about beauty from the host. Sure enough, the world was completely silent. After the Tsushui festival was successfully held, Liemo saw that it was getting late and narrowed his eyes. Today, He wanted to show his sincerity to Princess Ali. If he stayed one more night, then he would ask for too much in the future. Wei Wei Bai would also reject him. Everyone had left, but Liam O was still there. He was full of evil tricks, waiting to do something bad. Although he didn't bring medicine today, it didn't matter. He suddenly didn't hate the princess. So it was fine to sacrifice himself. Thinking of this, Liam O secretly swallowed his saliva and wiped his lips with his hand. He was just about to sneak away to find the princess. But suddenly, he saw a beautiful glass lamp appear in front of him. Behind the glass lamp was a young girl wearing a veil. Her delicate features were hazy and beautiful under the light. "Ollie, it's so late. Let me send you back." Liam O stared at her blankly for a moment before stuttering, "Why don't I stay?" She was practically throwing herself at him. She couldn't wait to climb into his bed. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but laugh. "Ollie, are you afraid that the road back will be dark?" Liam O was still holding the note in his hand. His breathing deepened. "No, I'm afraid that your highness is just joking with me." Wei Wei Bai was stunned. Then, she sighed and reached out to gently stroke his face. Her cold fingertips were warmed by his skin. "Ollie, you have a big heart. If you stay overnight, others will look down on you." She spoke in a low voice. Her eyes were clear and full of affection. "I don't want you to be seen as my subordinate. I know you're the best, so I want to help you reach a higher position." Li Mo's feigned innocent eyes darkened as he looked at her in silence. Wei Wei Bai didn't seem to notice the haze in his eyes. She raised the glass lamp and said with a smile, "All right, the road ahead is dark. I'll lead Ollie and won't let you fall." Liam O felt as if his chest was stuffed with something, sour, bitter, sweet, and bitter. Suddenly, she gently took his hand. The girl's calm and gentle voice sounded. "Let's go, my little Ollie." His tone was full of love, and his words were full of love. Liam O was led by her and for some reason, he felt an urge. If the road was longer and darker, would she continue to bring him along like this? Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 25. Crossover system, Adonis, come here, /crossover system, Adonis, come here, / crossover system, Adonis, come here. Download crossover system, Adonis, come here. Mobile. Crossover system, Adonis, come here. Chapter 2259. Little Lee. When Liam O returned with the glass lantern, he found his counselor sitting and eating sunflower seeds. While eating sunflower seeds, he read the news from all over the place. He glanced at the counselor and then curled up in the chair without a word. Fang Qingyun held the sunflower seeds, speechless. "What now? Did the princess embarrass you in public? Weren't you mentally prepared?" After all, self-esteem was nothing when it came to serving others with beauty. At the crucial moment, Liam O threw caution to the wind and didn't care about self-esteem. So even if he was humiliated by the princess, he shouldn't be so disheartened. Liam O turned his back to the counselor and crossed his arms. "The princess likes me." "Counselor, isn't that good?" "Liam O, but I feel uncomfortable." "Counselor, where? Is it a cold or a leg cramp?" Liam O was a bit angry. Uncomfortable is uncomfortable. "I feel uncomfortable everywhere." The counselor was very indifferent to his lord who had a lot of problems. "Then I will ask the old Chinese doctor at the village entrance to take your pulse and see if your period came or if you are pregnant." Liam O finally jumped up, his eyes dark and vicious. "Fang Qingyun, I will get angry if you continue like this." Fang Qingyun looked at him coldly. "Are you feeling guilty?" Li Mo's eyes trembled, but he pursed his lips and said coldly, "What is guilt?" I don't know. Fang Qingyun got up and said calmly, it's good that you don't. Li, once you set foot on this path, you have no chance to turn back. There is no need for guilt and self-blame. Liamo lay back down, his beautiful eyes staring at the lights on the roof. It was as if he saw the girl who sent him to the door and stood at the door, staring at his back. Liamo's eyes were deep and he finally looked away. Then he lay on his side. After a long time, the counselor heard him say, I won't be soft-hearted. These words were cold and hard, as if he wanted to bury something. The counselor sat on the chair and stared at Liamo's back for a long time. Finally, he sighed but didn't say anything. The news of the third prince being almost drowned by the eldest princess had spread to every corner of the city. When this matter was spread, it was said that the eldest princess was domineering and arrogant. How could he be so lawless in front of a prince? In this matter, Liamo's name was hidden. Everyone listened and thought it was a conflict between the princess and the prince. This incident damaged the reputation of both the third prince and the eldest princess. Fang Qingyun circled the names of the eldest princess and the third prince. Then he said to Liamo, once this rumor gets out, we can add fuel to the fire and exaggerate the ridiculous things the eldest princess and the third prince did, forcing the eldest princess to oppose the third prince. Then they would fight each other. Only then could they reap the benefits. Liamo lay by the window, gazing at the osmanthus flowers with a cold gaze. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and said in a puzzled tone, strange, why did my name disappear so completely? Even if they deliberately exaggerated the grudge between the eldest princess and the third prince, he was cast as an insignificant figure. But after the rumor spread, his name completely disappeared. Fang Qingyun said, perhaps, someone is protecting you. Liamo looked up at the counselor and his eyelashes suddenly trembled. He didn't say anything and continued to look outside. The counselor coughed lightly. Good momentum, keep it up. You did a good job seducing the princess. Liamo crossed his arms and puffed out his cheeks like an angry puffer fish. To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click Save at the bottom to record your reading record. Chapter 2260. The strategist comforted, if this goes on, the princess will fall in love with you and give up everything for you. Liamo snorted, what's the use of letting your lord live off a woman? The strategist, aha. You're the one who licks your face to live off a woman, it's none of your business. The youth was still angry when he saw something and jumped up, rushing to the door. As expected, the princess's servant came again. The servant smiled eagerly, Commander, Her Royal Highness said you can return the glass lamp today. Her Royal Highness is waiting for you. Commander Li was the princess's favorite and no one dared to provoke him. Liamo pursed his lips, his mouth tight. After the servant finished the princess's words, he tactfully left. Fang Qingyun was plotting how to make the princess royal fight with the third prince. But he saw Liamo with his head down, hands in his sleeves, a strange gloominess on his face. Strategist Fang thought he was feeling guilty and was thinking of how to comfort him. But then he saw Liamo suddenly open a suitcase and plunge into a dozen suitcases. I've worn black so it's fresh. Today, I'll wear blue. The obstinate little vixen is me. Strategist, Liamo's face was gloomy, there are too few clothes. None of them can bring out my unparalleled beauty. Strategist's fingers trembled, unable to hold the pen steady. Screw your unparalleled beauty. You're supposed to live off a woman, not be a sissy. Liamo took out a set of clothes. Strategist Fang, how about this? Strategist Fang looked and found the collar was open to the chest. His eyes were so hot he wanted to cry. Wearing this, is he going to be a hoodlum? Liam, oh, no, it's too bold. The princess thinks I'm a loose person. I'm more conservative. Strategist, big brother, wake up. You're going to fight for power. You're a man of steel. Why does it feel like you're going to fight for the position of empress? In the end, Liam chose the initial plan, a blue set of clothes. Then he tied a hairband of the same color. The young man was handsome and exquisite. His every movement was filled with charm. Liam tightened his belt to make his sturdy waist look even better. Then, Liam put on a melancholy expression. His eyelashes lightly covered his fragile eyes, and there was a hint of coldness between his brows. The current me will definitely cause people to feel pity for me. He touched his handsome face and said, I really do make people want to commit crimes. The strategist silently turned around and took out a spittoon. Blarg, did Liam know he ate too much and purposely came to disgust him? Wei Bai heard that Liam was here. She was putting on her clothes. There were too many clothes, and it was difficult to choose. After all, she was so beautiful now that there weren't many clothes that could complement her beauty. She expressed her pain and melancholy to the system. The system indicated that it could give her 2 more scars like dog skin plasters. I guarantee that any clothes will be prettier than the host's. Host, hearing the summons, Liam tugged at his sleeves and walked in with a straight posture. However, he found that there was no one in the room. Behind the screen, a figure faintly appeared in the light. His breathing paused for a moment, and he felt the heart in his chest beat a lot faster. Because he found that the figure was graceful, as if she was putting on clothes. The girl behind the screen suddenly turned around and asked softly, Commander Lee. Liam stared blankly at her half-clothed figure. His throat began to dry up. Your Highness. // to make it easier for you to read next time, you can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 2261. The girl was silent for a moment, then said shyly, No, I can't tie my belt. Come help me. His words were filled with hesitation, and cautiousness as he probed carefully. Liam knew how the princess felt about him. He thought she would make a move on him on the first night. But now, after the confession, after the mutual affection, she carefully reached out her finger, wanting to touch him. In fact, Liam knew that she respected and even adored him. Maybe it was because of Liam's hesitation that the girl noticed. The girl's gentle voice trembled, If you don't know how, then I will do it myself. She couldn't bear to force him. Even after being rejected, she was still willing to compromise. For the first time, Liam felt that he could control her emotions. He could make her happy, but he could also make her sad. His mood was inexplicably better, but he didn't know why he was suppressing a sense of irritation. Liam reached out and gently grabbed the edge of the screen. He leaned sideways and could only see behind the screen a corner of the girl's dress. It was a light blue, the same color as his clothes, but much lighter. She could even choose a piece of clothing. Liam couldn't help but smile. His voice was low and hoarse, Your Highness doesn't mind this official's rough hands and feet. Of course, this official is duty-bound. Saying so, he stepped into the screen. The girl's back was facing him. She was already dressed, but the belt was hanging loosely on her slender waist. Wei Bai seemed to know he came in. Her eyelashes fluttered, her side profile was unusually soft in the light. Then I will have to trouble Commander. She spoke softly, her red lips slightly moving. Liam was nervous. He reached out and touched her belt with his fingertips. The belt was soft. He pursed his lips and held his breath. When he was close to her, his slender figure almost enveloped the petite girl in his arms. Limeau's fingertips were white as he pinched a mark on the belt. He saw her fragile white neck, her skin so white it was shining, but with a pink flush. She was also nervous. She lowered her head, her long hair falling behind her back. She was unusually obedient. The always strong and cold Princess Royal. In front of him, she was like a little girl, full of tender and pure feeling. The impact left Limeau's mind blank for a moment. Only his chest felt numb from nervousness. Seeing that he didn't move, Wei Wei Bai said nervously, "Commander Li." Limeau suddenly woke up. His fingers gripped her belt tightly before he bent down and respectfully fastened it for her. This was clearly a very good opportunity. He hugged her and did something to her. Nothing much, just a kiss would do. Since the princess had given him such an obvious hint, if he didn't pounce on her, he would be letting her down. But for some reason, Limeau couldn't bring himself to do it. It was as if he would be rude to her. Limeau tied the belt for her and found that her waist was too thin. He secretly touched it with his hand. Wei Wei Bai's body stiffened, but she didn't say anything. Limeau, on the other hand, blushed and pulled his hand back awkwardly. He looked nervous and didn't say anything. He quickly took her long, gorgeous coat and hurriedly put it on Wei Wei Bai. Then he lowered his head, looked away, and showed a forced smile. "Your Highness, it's done." Wei Wei Bai looked at him for a long time, seeing that his ears were red. She slowly showed a smile, the tenderness in her eyes so obvious. Download the https://www.sashu.com/download the full article, https://www.sashu.com download the full article, https://www.sashu.com download the full article, https://sashu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time. You can click Save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 2262. She then put on her coat and gently put her hand on his arm. "All right, let's go." Limeau sighed in relief, wanting to escape from this fragrant boudoir. Wei Wei Bai walked slowly. Limeau was an impatient person. But slowing down and accommodating to her speed was also a wonderful feeling. In the study, Wei Wei Bai took out a stack of memorials and whispered, "I had people gather evidence of third brother's abuse of the people, corruption and murder." Limeau froze, his eyes flashing with disbelief. She was doing the same thing as him. Did she know his purpose? Limeau clenched his fists, his eyes flashing with vigilance. But before he could plot, the girl in front of him said calmly, "I said, no one can bully you." Limeau's heart skipped a beat. He slowly looked up, his eyes deep and dull. Wei Wei Bai didn't seem to see his eyes. The slender girl stood by the desk, her beautiful fingers pressing on the memorials. "Third brother has been too jumpy these years. The imperial family doesn't need a prince who disgraces the court. Prison will wake him up." She didn't seem to know that these things could ruin the third prince's path to power. She was calm, as if it was a small matter. "I called you here today to tell you not to be afraid. He won't be able to bully you anymore." Wei Wei Bai finished and turned to see Limeau looking at her with a complicated expression. She tilted her head and couldn't help touching her veil. "What's wrong? Did I scare you because I didn't wear my veil properly?" Limeau pursed his lips uncomfortably and smiled stiffly. "No, I just think that the prince's actions are too sensational." Bai Weiwei smiled, a trace of softness appearing in her eyes. "Don't be afraid. I took care of it for Limeau." He won't hurt you in the future. Liam clenched his fists, sweating. His throat was dry. This was clearly the best course of action, but the eldest princess and the third prince were fighting. Even the eldest princess disregarded everything and destroyed the third prince. Moreover, he was not implicated, which was a great thing. However, he was not very happy. Wei Bai thought he was worried. She reached out as if she wanted to touch his head. She was about to stand on her tiptoes when she realized that he was too tall. Liam had already lowered his head and was half squatting. His eyes were dark, but he was at a loss. Wei Bai blinked and suddenly smiled. Her fingers landed on his hair. The fingertips on her hair were soft and weightless. Liam, on the other hand, felt as if he had touched the bottom of his heart. It was warm and comfortable. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 30. After dealing with third prince, Wei Bai placed her hand on Liam's and went out for a walk. The huge courtyard was filled with flowers and plants. Liam knew that there were only a few servants. Every time he came, she would ask the servant to leave. This was a way to protect him, to prevent others from saying that he was her boy toy. A gust of wind blew and lifted the veil, hiding her face. Wei Bai was nervous, pressing the veil with her hand. But her hand was held by Liam. Wei Bai was nervous. Liam looked at her in a daze, his beautiful eyes shining. Your Highness, I want to see your face. Wei Bai was flustered. Don't look, it's ugly. Liam boldly used his finger to pull off her veil. No, in my eyes, your Highness is the most beautiful. Chapter 2263. It was clearly just sweet talk and pleasantries. When the veil was lifted, his breath stopped. The girl's face was gentle and beautiful. The faint red mark on her face made her fair and tender skin look even more gorgeous. There was no makeup on her face, but her lips were still red and beautiful. Her eyes were so clear that he could see the bottom, reflecting his face. She was beautiful. This kind of beauty was not the kind that was full of vitality and full of attack power. Instead, it was a beauty that sunk into prosperity, like a lotus in clear water. Clear to the extreme, gorgeous beyond compare. Liam held her face, looking at the fear and gentle affection in her eyes. Suddenly, he heard a cracking sound coming from the depths of his heart. Something dark and gloomy ran out. He seemed to be bewitched, gently touching her red mark with his finger. Your Highness, although the scar is obvious, I don't care. Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled, as if she was afraid of others mentioning her scar. Liam's eyes darkened, as if some kind of beast was hibernating, eroding his rationality bit by bit. He lowered his voice, dark and sexy, as if it was dipped in poison, gloomy and gorgeous. People judge people by their appearance, but I am not such a person. I admire your Highness's intelligence and talent. Appearance is only skin. Wei Bai looked up at him blankly. Liam smiled. The youth's face was very good, delicate and wild. This smile was so beautiful that it made people's heart palpitate. Sure enough, Wei Bai's eyes trembled, her face blushing. Liam saw her face, and his face became even more beautiful. He resisted the urge to lick it. He continued softly, so in the future, your Highness, you don't need to wear a veil in front of me. His fingers were still caressing her red mark unhurriedly, as if reminding her of her imperfection. He emphasized again, even if the scar is ugly, I don't care. But there are too many malicious people in this world, so it's enough for me to see your face. She did not know how beautiful she was. She hurt her face when she was in her teens, thinking that she was disfigured. She always wore a veil, and after a long time, she really thought that she was ugly. She thought that the mark on her face was so light that it was almost invisible. It would scare people. It was like a treasure covered in dust before the dust was wiped off. Even Jinbao thought he was a rock. Liamo knew how much chaos her appearance could cause. How many people were willing to die for her beauty? If she knew that she wasn't ugly anymore, there would definitely be more men who would be her guests. At that time, he wouldn't be strange anymore. Liamo silently calculated his own benefits and convinced himself that hiding her appearance was a good thing. But there was another dark purpose that was on the verge of being revealed. But it remained in his heart. He just didn't want anyone to see her. This was an extremely stubborn possessiveness. A terrible, dark feeling of possessiveness welled up. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 35. Wei Wei Bai blinked, seemingly convinced. She couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile. Amidst her pure shyness, there was a hint of flirtatiousness that was more beautiful than the blooming flowers around her. Then listen to Li, her voice was soft and intimate. Everyone in the world has a beautiful face, but my little Ollie likes interesting souls. Li Mo's eyes flashed with guilt. She pulled a smile in front of him. She was more than interesting. More importantly, she was stunningly beautiful. Liamo felt that he was so bad that his head was leaking pus, tricking her like this. But he didn't regret letting her misunderstand his ugliness. If she wasn't wearing a veil, who knew how many bastards would covet her? Liamo coldly thought, she'll just let me see. No one is allowed to see. Wei Wei Bai suddenly patted his shoulder. Liamo lowered his head to say something. A light touch like a falling flower landed on his lips. Liamo was stunned, as if he couldn't believe it. Wei Wei Bai's face was red, her eyes were a little wet, but there was a hint of innocence. This is my first time, it's not dirty. Liamo's fingers trembled as he touched his lips. His mind was buzzing, but his mouth automatically spoke. It's my first time too, I'm not dirty. Wei Wei Bai was stunned, then suddenly laughed. Then it doesn't count as taking advantage of Ollie. Liamo's face turned red. This wasn't an act. It really was his first time. Download the https://www.sashu.com/download the full article, https://www.sashu.com download the full article, https://www.sashu.com download the full article, https://sashu.com next time you open the bookshelf, you will be able to see it. If you like. Chapter 2264. You can search Time Transmigration System, Adonis, come to Sashu.com in Baidu to find the. After Liamo returned, he lay on the recliner with a gloomy face. Counselor, every time he came back, he would lie down with his back to him. Those who didn't know better would think he was so weak from the princess that he couldn't even walk properly. Although he didn't want to pay attention to this guy with a bunch of problems. But when he thought of the salary, forget it, he would just ask. Did the princess embarrass you? Liamo's face was cold as he said, no. Counselor, then why are you unhappy? Liamo, which eye of yours saw me unhappy? Counselor, both eyes saw it. Liamo sneered, saying sarcastically, the princess is ugly, right? Counselor, how the fuck would I know if the princess was ugly? But everyone said she was ugly. But as a practical counselor who couldn't gossip without evidence, he still asked for confirmation, is the princess really ugly? Liamo sulked for a while before saying angrily, of course she is. Isn't everyone saying she is ugly? Do you still doubt it? Counselor, Liamo turned his head, not looking at the counselor. Could it be that some dirty bastard covets her? Could it be that someone doesn't believe she is ugly? Counselor, Liam sat up in excitement, don't worry about the third prince. Spread the rumor that the Princess Royal is ugly, so ugly that she can't be seen, so ugly that it will scare people to death. Counselor said cautiously, so the princess is that ugly. After all, Liam had seen the princess's face. Even he was scared. Was she that ugly? Then it must have been hard for his lord to sacrifice so much for his career. No wonder he was so sarcastic these days. He must have been scared by the princess's appearance and spouted nonsense. Liam's eyes turned ruthless, saying coldly, who said she was ugly? You dare to insult her. Counselor, then he put down the peach in his hand that was said to be very expensive and not available in this season. Screw you, I won't eat this bowl of rice. He wanted to resign. He wanted to leave this crazy, feline, and dog-like son of a bitch. Liam suddenly pursed his lips and lowered his head dispiritedly. He clutched at his hair. Unbearable. The counselor picked up the peach again. What's wrong? Liam snorted, don't bother. Advisor fall, screw your peaches, I'm not eating anymore. Liam lay back down and curled into a ball. Suddenly, I don't just want power anymore. His voice was low, but unusually cold. Feng Qingyun became serious. What else do you want? You can't be too greedy. Ollie, with your identity, you're destined to reach your end. If you want the throne, you won't succeed. Liam's eyes were dark and there was a trace of evil coldness in between his exquisite brows. Who said I want the throne? I want the princess. Power and beauty. He wanted it all. Feng Qingyun paused. Why is it so sudden? Are you in love with her? Liam frowned and coldly retorted, how could I fall in love with her? But he pursed his lips. She has some redeeming qualities. In any case, I will definitely have a woman by my side in the future. I don't think any woman in this world can enter my eyes. She is the only one. Feng Qingyun rubbed her nose in annoyance. How can you do this? You want to take away the princess's power and make her betray everyone, yet you want her to stay by your side. Wasn't this courting death? When the princess regained her senses in the future, Liam would be her greatest enemy. /save button below to record this reading record. Chapter 2265. How could a vicious woman love him willingly? Liam pursed his lips, his eyes were usually pure and beautiful. But now, they were full of ghastly aura. I want her. I don't care what kind of interesting soul she is. When the time comes, I'll break her and she won't be tied up. These words were so innocent that they were cruel. Only a cold and heartless person like Liam would be able to say that. Feng Qingyun was speechless and sighed. As long as you like it. Liam narrowed his eyes. The unparalleled youth revealed his bestial side. He gritted his teeth. The third prince has been broken by the princess. We don't need to do anything. Feng Qingyun paused and looked at Liam. But Liam turned around, his beautiful eyes filled with satisfaction at having achieved his goal. So it was the eldest princess who did it for him. Feng Qingyun's voice was calm. It seems the princess has deep feelings for you. To protect Liam, the eldest princess made a clean move and broke the third prince. Hearing this, Liam smiled. His eyes sparkled. That's right, she likes me a lot. So even if she knew his purpose in the future, maybe, she would continue to like him. Because in this world, he was the only one who didn't dislike her ugliness. The ugly Wei Wei Bai was staring at the mirror. I want to fall in love with myself. She held the mirror and turned it around. The system embroidered flowers. 50 handkerchiefs embroidered with chrysanthemums. That's one day of life. More embroidery. Wei Wei Bai turned around. Right, what is Li Mo doing? The system glanced, looking, in the mirror. Looking in the mirror before sleeping. We're all narcissistic people like this. Wei Wei Bai, it's useless. He's not as good looking as me. System, forget it, it's not the first time its host is like this. Why are you making a fuss? Embroider chrysanthemums. Before Li Mo went to bed, he held the mirror and stared at it for a long time. Finally, he admitted defeat and threw the mirror away. He pulled the quilt and grumbled. She's still better looking. The matter of the third prince's imprisonment made the struggle for power in the imperial family even more turbulent. The emperor's condition worsened. Even the imperial physician had secretly revealed that they could only prepare for the funeral. The second prince had been secretly recruiting soldiers. He planned to seize the throne before the first prince succeeded the throne. For all the princes, this was the most critical moment. If he failed to seize the throne, he would die. However, the fact that Wei Wei Bai had defeated the third prince was like a wake-up call. Women could also seize power. These princes all began to secretly attack the eldest princess. After all, the former empress had held court behind the curtain for more than 20 years. Her prestige was frightening. No one wanted to see another former empress. Women could not become empress. However, they were able to control the court and make the emperor a mere decoration. This was also why the empress had died. The reason why the imperial court was in turmoil was because the emperor was known for his cowardice and incompetence. And the eldest princess inherited all of her mother's connections. Many of the old officials in the court were on the side of the princess. Even if there was a new emperor, the eldest princess might take over his power if he was not careful. If the eldest princess had not attacked the third prince, the princes would not have felt the crisis. This time, the eldest princess was completely exposed to all the intricate power struggles. Wei Wei Bai listened to the officials in the mansion who were kneeling and discussing the various recent attacks. Many people had tried to assassinate her. Chapter 2266. In the imperial court, many officials who belonged to the Princess Royal's faction were attacked. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were cold, her face behind the veil was blank. She was not listening at all. The system was handling everything. The system finally concluded, your brothers, your father's concubines are all trying to kill you. Wei Wei Bai said, go on, go on, go on. Only when you're happy can you die early. The system said, fuck, your second prince and first prince sent out more than 20 assassins at the same time to kill you in 2 groups. Wei Wei Bai said, when they come, remember to knock a few out, don't let them commit suicide. The system said, why do I feel so busy in this world? Wei Wei Bai said, no, it's because you had too much free time. The system thought about it and felt that it was true. Bai Wei Wei, in any case, in this plane, with my unparalleled beauty and supreme power, I can brush up favorability. The system said, I'm just afraid that your power will be too much. Wei Wei Bai said, I'll leave as soon as I farm favorability. Oh right, the temporary time limit hasn't been fixed yet. The system said, I don't know why, maybe I cut a line when I removed the favorability indicator, so it short-circuited. Wei Wei Bai said, then I'm in danger. If it was only a month, she would have died too unjustly. The system said, don't worry, the machine only looks at the results. Temporary means that there is no time limit. If it's fixed suddenly, the time will be recalculated. In other words, it would suddenly show a month. It would start counting from the day it was displayed. Wei Wei Bai thought for a while, when will the assassination begin? The system said, aren't you going to the lake tomorrow? It'll kill you on the lake. A few who know how to swim will sink the boatman will be the killer, and a few who are good at Qigong will fly to kill you. Wei Wei Bai held her face, I think I'm very popular. The system was very understanding. How about I give you 2 more scars so that you won't be troubled by them? Wei Wei Bai, the system said, come on, don't be so courteous with me. Put your face closer and I'll put more on it. I guarantee that whoever sees you will run away faster than they would if they saw a ghost. Wei Wei Bai immediately changed the topic. Tomorrow, I'll bring a little fresh meat on board to stimulate the target. The system put away the ointment regretfully. Bring a few more. You have a bunch in your backyard anyway. The original owner kept a bunch of good-looking men in the backyard, all for the sake of appreciation. However, Wei Wei Bai forgot about it and didn't pay attention to it. Wei Wei Bai was stunned for a moment before she remembered that there really was a pile of them. So after thinking about it, he slowly said, then bring a few more. Liamo was having a meal with advisor Fong when he received the news. He ate fast and liked to squat on the chair. It was not elegant at all. Liamo shoveled rice into his mouth as he tossed the information aside. The princess's information was urgent and he wanted to see it as soon as possible. However, as soon as he ate a mouthful of rice, he saw the princess and more than 10 good-looking young men touring the lake together this afternoon. Liamo was taken aback by this information. Then, he struggled to move his teeth and realized something. He spat the rice back into the bowl. A few grains of rice flew into the dishes. Advisor Fong, who was eating, did he think that he ate too much and wanted to disgust him so that he could save food? Li Mo's face was terrifyingly gloomy. His slender white fingers clutched the piece of paper and crushed it bit by bit. Advisor Fong, who was about to ask for an explanation. Download the https://www.sashu.com/download the https://www.sashu.com download the https://www.sashu.com download the https://sashu.com button below to record your reading record. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.